Again? Okay, this time I really mean it. We're about to start. Please, everyone, take your seats. We have a real treat for you to start off the event, so you'll want to hear this.
Joyful, joyful, we adore the God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before the opening to the song. And melt the clouds of sin and sadness, drive the dark of doubt away, give our immortal gladness, fill us with the light of day. All the works with joy surround the earth and heavens burn. stars join the happy chorus, which the morning stars begun. Father, love is reigning o'er us, brother, love is man to man, ever singing march the onward victors in the midst of strife. Joyful music leads us somewhat in the trio song of life. Song of life.
Thank you so much to Advantage Project, this Ukrainian band, which once again showed us how Ukrainians can blow our minds with their creativity. And thanks also to all of you who are joining us here for the Global Europe Forum, whether you're here with us in the European Parliament in Brussels or tuning in online as we are broadcasting this live. I'm Terry Schultz. I'm going to be your moderator for today, promising you thought-provoking discussion for the afternoon. We all know we need to have it, the way 2026 is shaping up so far. So Ukraine was not invited here by accident. Renew Europe very much wanted to start this event by reminding us all how central Ukraine is to Europe's security and defense. And not only that, but how much they are already part of the European family, culturally, emotionally, spiritually, and if Renew Europe and other advocates have their way, of course, it will also be a full member of the European Union as soon as possible. So that is certainly something that is going to be in our minds today as we continue our discussions throughout the afternoon on how to make Europe safer, how to protect democracy, how to improve the democracy that we have to protect. And once again, I am very pleased to welcome you here on that beautiful note. And now to bring to the stage the president of Renew Europe, Valérie Ayé, who will really get us started. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Terry, dear colleagues, dear guests, dear friends. Thank you for coming in such large numbers and welcome to the first event organized by the Renew Europe Group this year. First of all, as is customary, but no less sincere, I would like to wish you all the best for the new year. I wish you all happiness and good health. And above all, I hope that we don't lose our way in 2026. This may sound like a joke, but the risk is real. The risk is real in a world that seems to become increasingly deregulated, where alliances are being called into question, where some prefer the use of force and brutality over diplomacy, where the internet is a battlefield that begins in the privacy of our homes and influences even the ballot box. Let's not lose our way. Let's not lose sight of the ultimate goal of our European history, which is peace and freedom for all peoples. Let's not lose our values and principles, particularly our belief in a multilateral order governed by international law. But in the midst of this prevailing gloom, where the urge to over-engage in self-criticism is very present, let's not lose sight of our strengths, our assets, and our weapons either. The European Union is an economic power, a political power, a military power. Not only do we not say this enough, but worse still, we forget it, and even sometimes we internalize in our own discourse the criticisms thrown at us by our enemies. So yes, we must do better, do more, do bigger, do stronger on many issues. Yes, the Draghi report should already have been implemented in its entirety. Yes, we must invest heavily in our independence and sovereignty. 1,000 times yes. And you will always find the Renew Europe group to be a demanding and constructive partner in this regard. But despite all the flaws of our union, let's not forget that we are a highly attractive market of 450 million consumers, a market on which even the United States depends. Let's not forget that we have legislative weapons that enable us to defend our values and economic interests, such as the DSA, the DMA, and the anti-coercion tool. And let's not forget that tomorrow it is through our power of sanctions that we will be able to strike a harder blow against the mullahs regime and support the Iranian People's Revolution. Let's not forget our strengths. We are free to speak our minds. And for that reason, it is our responsibility to be the voice of the people fighting for their freedom in Ukraine, in Georgia, their Salome, Belarus, Palestine, Israel, Venezuela, or Iran. This dual observation, on one hand, of a world that is changing and breaking free from the foundations of multilateralism, and on the other hand, of our inability to want to be powerful, could be fatal to us. But at Renew Europe, we don't believe in fatalism. On the contrary, we believe in the power of action and change. And that's why we are gathered here today to discuss the theme of freedom on the offensive. I'm counting on our discussions to turn observations into proposals. So on behalf of the Renew Europe group, I'm honored by the presence of all our guests today. I'm honored that President Salome Zourabichvili is with us today to echo. Thank you, Salome. Thank you, President. To echo the ongoing fight of the Georgian people for democracy and holding free elections. And I'm honored by the presence of all our guests, of course, Mark Rutte, Michael McGrath, Camille Grand, Robert Andresak, and Marietje Schaake, whom I welcome back to Parliament. I would like to thank them all, as well as my colleagues, Marie-Agnes Strack-Zimmermann, and Nathalie Loiseau, who will lead the discussions. And without further ado, I'm delighted to hand over the microphone to open this day of reflection to someone who, in his previous capacity, has been a great and long-standing leader of the Renew Europe family, and whom, in his new role, we are still very lucky to call a friend and an ally. Of course, I'm calling Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte. Please, Mark.
Thank you so much. Well, great to be here and to see so many people I know so well. Good to see you, madam. How are you doing? Pleasure to see you. I hope you're fine. And of course, Terry, who will lead us later in the debate. And of course, you, Madam President De Valerie, thank you for your very warm welcome. And let me start by saying that it is always a pleasure to be on this side of town, to be at the European Parliament. This is my first public speaking engagement this year, and it is very meaningful to have this conversation with you, with the members of Parliament. At the NATO summit in The Hague last summer, we decided to make our deterrence and defence a priority. We agreed a plan, as you know, to invest 5% of GDP annually in defence by 2035. with 3.5% on core defense and 1.5% on defense and security-related issues. Yes, that is a lot of money, but it is what is required to build our armed forces and buy the capabilities those forces need to protect us. And here we are talking about battle tanks, fighter jets, ships, long-range missiles and ammunition, but also artificial intelligence, cyber defense, space capabilities, and of course, much more. In The Hague, we also agreed to speed up defense production and innovation. And this is, of course, about re-energizing our industries across Europe and North America, so that they step up supply. There are certainly business opportunities for our industries. But it is more than that. There are real benefits for all of us. Because when supply goes up, the result is more security, more economic growth, and also many more jobs. The defense dividend is real. I know, and you all know, that getting to this famous 5% and accelerating production requires hard work and tough decisions from all of us, all our nations and all your constituents. But we need to do it. And we need to do it basically for two reasons. One, because the security situation demands it. We need to be honest. The dangers we face are real, and the dangers we face are lasting. Russia remains our most significant threat. Putin's war machine is churning out military equipment around the clock. And Moscow is testing us through cyber attacks, sabotage, and more. And there is no reason to believe Russia's pattern of aggressive and reckless actions will change anytime soon. On the contrary, Russia is seeking long-term confrontation. And it is not alone. Russia is working with China, with Iran and North Korea. And these countries fuel Moscow's war against Ukraine. And together, they are attempting to undermine our stability and security. At the same time, the threat from terrorism persists and instability remains rampant in NATO's southern neighborhood. The second reason why we need to deliver on the 5% is that the time when we conveniently let the United States carry the burden for our security is over. The US is absolutely committed to NATO, but this commitment comes with a clear and long-standing expectation that Europe and Canada take more responsibility for their own security. And I believe that is only fair. So 5% must be the direction of travel. There's basically no time to waste. Ensuring allies step up and speed up efforts on defense will remain my and NATO's absolute priority as we prepare for the next summit, which will take place in Ankara in Turkey in July. Then Ukraine, which clearly is still a huge priority. Because, as we all know, our security is inextricably linked to Ukraine's security. Just last week, I was at the Coalition of the Willing meeting in Paris, where leaders discussed how we can support and secure the future for Ukraine. It was a constructive meeting, where we had concrete discussions on robust security guarantees for Ukraine, and where Europe and the US affirmed their readiness to provide such guarantees to secure Ukraine after a peace deal with Russia. Meanwhile, NATO continues to support Ukraine every day, and we do that in various ways, including through the Pearl Initiative, which supplies vital US equipment, including air defense, which is particularly vital these days, for Ukraine to protect its people and hold the front line, paid for by allies. Regardless of when this war ends, our support to Ukraine will continue to be important to ensure a lasting peace. After all, the Ukrainian armed forces will remain the first line of defense. Supporting Ukraine and keeping our own people safe is not a job that NATO does alone. It is a team effort, and the European Union is an essential player. The partnership between NATO and the EU is growing stronger every day. And that is exactly what we need. Because when we combine our strength of NATO and the EU, we can more effectively tackle the many challenges we face. And as you know, 23 nations, members of the EU, are also allies in NATO. And working together, we keep Ukraine strong today and able to defend itself against any aggression in the future. And working together, we can produce more defense capabilities. And we can produce them faster. We can innovate better and outsmart our competitors. Now is not the time to go it alone. And it's not the time to create barriers between us that would increase costs, complicate production and hamper innovation. Instead, we need to leverage our respective strengths even more. NATO is strong at standard setting and capability targets that are informed by our defense plans. NATO has a strong command and control force structure. And the European Union has all the tools of the internal market at its disposal. And of course the convening power to bring together the member states in the EU, so to make sure that the money is there to invest in defense. So we complement each other. And yes, it is undeniable that Russia, China, North Korea and Iran are aligning more and more. And they are challenging us. But they are only starting to understand what partnership really means. We are miles ahead. We can build on decades of friendship between our organizations and between our nations on both sides of the Atlantic. And we can build on the growing partnerships with countries around the world. And that is an incredible advantage. Let's ensure we retain it. I'll certainly play my part, and I count on you, and I know I can, to play yours. So thank you very much, and I look forward to our discussions. Thank you so much.
Which one do you like? There you go. Oh, you want? Okay. There's your mic.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have to drink water. Okay. So, Mr. Secretary General, I know some things are going well for you. And I would just point out, I've covered NATO almost 20 years, so we're kind of the same in that we kind of just hang around and keep our jobs and hope for the best. But you know I have to ask this. You mentioned don't go it alone, don't create fractures where none are needed. We cannot avoid the question, the problem that has been created with President Trump's claims on Greenland. The Greenlandic government yesterday stated again they want their security to be determined by NATO, to be inside NATO. So this is going to be on your plate, even if you wish it weren't. And you said yesterday that it is not a crisis. So I would like to know what word you would use to describe what's happening now and how you can possibly explain that security inside the alliance is enhanced in any way by the U.S. claims that they need to own Greenland, not just maybe boost their presence, but actually own the island. Can you just unpack that for us? It's really what's on everybody's minds here.
Well, let me start by saying that it was Donald Trump, the American president, who already, when he was Trump 45, so his previous presidency between 2016 and 2020, was making us aware collectively of the need to protect the High North in the Arctic. As you know, we have 8 High North countries in the Arctic. 1 is Russia, outside NATO, and 7 are inside NATO. That's Canada and the US. And then in Europe, it is Denmark through Greenland, and Iceland, Finland, Norway, and Sweden. These 7 countries are basically bordering on the Arctic. And it was President Trump, in his first term, as I said, who basically alerted us to the fact that sea lanes are opening up, that Russia and China are more active, and that we have to do more there together. We had a very good discussion in NATO. It was around summer. We are now taking next steps to build on that, because we all agree in NATO, we all agree that when it comes to the protection of the Arctic, we have to work together. And that's exactly what we are doing. Then, of course, I'm never commenting when there are discussions between allies. That's not up for me to comment on, but I can assure you that there is complete agreement that when it comes to the assessment of the urgency of the security situation, not only in the Baltic Sea, not only on the eastern flank, but also in the Arctic and in the southern neighborhood, obviously also. But now, concentrating on the Arctic, we all work together.
Okay, but I really asked about Greenland specifically. Is there any single ally who would support the US forcibly taking Greenland?
Again, what we are discussing here is to make sure that the Arctic is safe, that we have 7 countries working together, including the United States. So we came together in NATO, in the North Atlantic Council. As you know, we work together as the ambassadors, and sometimes it is in the formation of foreign ministers or defense ministers, or the leaders when it is a summit. We call that the North Atlantic Council, a bit like you have the European Council in Europe. And the North Atlantic Council came together at the level of the ambassadors and decided that we have to step up collectively. We all agree on this, and when it comes now to the next steps, we also all agree that we have to take those next steps, and we are working on that diligently at the moment.
And Denmark did this. I mean, over the last year, it spent $14 billion additional dollars, including on defense for Greenland specifically. It has enhanced its missile defense. It's got new Arctic vessels. It's really spent a lot of money and put a lot of time, perhaps acknowledging that it should have been done earlier. You know, this is something that allies can agree on. But I still have to come back to the point: how would Arctic security be enhanced if the U.S. invaded Greenland?
But again, and therefore my role is to make sure that the alliance as a whole is doing what is necessary to keep the whole of the alliance safe. And you're totally right on Denmark. Denmark is investing in Boeing P-8s. Denmark is investing in long-range drones.
Surveillance planes for those non-NATO people?
Yeah, they are also investing in more F-35s, and they are investing in air-to-air refueling. And all these capabilities you need, not only to keep Denmark safe, to keep NATO as a whole safe, but also to make sure that when it comes to the Arctic region, and for them, of course, a special priority when it comes to Greenland, to stay as safe as possible. But again, I never comment when there are discussions between allies.
You know, I'm doing my best.
So we agree. But I can tell you that when we talk about the security of the Arctic region, there is no disagreement within the alliance when it comes to that issue. And that is not only pertaining to the 7 who border on the Arctic, that's also true for other allies who are very much involved here. You have seen comments from the Brits and from the Germans who all want to help here to make sure that the Arctic region, that is US, Canada and Europe, stay safe.
Well, I was just going to follow up. If you wanted to make any announcement that there's going to be something like an Arctic Sentry mission, it would be a good place to do it. You know, you had Baltic Sentry, Eastern Sentry when the need was acute. I mean, do you expect Arctic Sentry or Greenland Sentry to be stood up?
What I expect over the coming weeks is discussions how we will take the next step, and the next step has to be about given the fact that we come to the same analysis, all NATO allies, and had a very good discussion on this around summer. We had a first debate again, it was now, I think, last week in the North Atlantic Council on what the next step should be. And we are now working on that with all allies involved, particularly, of course, the 7 who are bordering on the Arctic.
I'm not allowed to take all the questions for myself because I would, but I do have to open to discussion, and hopefully some of them will follow up on some of this. And when I call on you, please stand up, and because I don't know where everyone is sitting that is going to get a question. First, MEP is Dan Barna. There you go, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we have the Secretary General until 4 o'clock. He's given us some extra time, so let's do our best.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Nice to see you here. Following the January 6th summit you have mentioned in your speech, how does NATO assess the genuine credibility of security guarantees that rely primarily on European force projections without direct troop commitment of the United States? Specifically, does shifting the burden of enforcement to a coalition within the alliance risk creating a 2-tier NATO that emboldens Russia to test these new boundaries? This is the first question. The second one is something on everyone's lips. We hear about NATO's future and the role in academia, in media, and of course in politics. I grew up in Romania when NATO was just a dream and then became a reality. And now I see doubts and fears cast shadow on this reality. So allow me to be very blunt. Are you the last Secretary General of NATO?
So you thought I would be provocative. So
I was not planning to quit already, but I'm sure there will be a successor someday. I have no idea, by the way, how long I will be in this job because nobody told me. But
and you never know, as we saw with Stoltenberg.
Yeah, you
right?
never know, and there needs to be unanimity on the successor. But I never got a contract or whatever, so I have no idea for how long I've been appointed. But I'm thoroughly enjoying the role and the job, and I feel it's really important. And there is a lot of support. Not for me personally, that's not important, but for the collective endeavor as NATO. And I'm so happy so you're from Romania and what you just mentioned. And I think it is totally true that NATO is crucial. I was born in 1967 and I was raised with the idea that Nicolae Ceausescu would forever rule Romania. And now Romania is in the EU, Romania is in NATO. These are some of the big events of history. Let's never forget what we collectively went through and how important that is. Now, NATO is strong, and I think because of the decisions in The Hague during the NATO summit, it is even stronger. Because finally now we have decided to spend what is needed to protect ourselves based on an assessment of all the defense needs we collectively have. And by doing that, we are also equalizing our spending with the United States, which was since Eisenhower debate, the fact that the US was spending so much more than the Europeans and the Canadians, and now we are equalizing. I think that's great news. On your first question, it is a little bit different. When you look at the meeting in Paris last week, what came out of that meeting is a 3-level approach when it comes to security guarantees for Ukraine. Level 1 is the Ukrainian armed forces. They will be, of course, the first line of defense, as in every country, defending themselves. The second element of security guarantees will be what is called the coalition of the willing, being brought together by Keir Starmer and President Macron of France, Emmanuel Macron, many countries working together, providing security guarantees for Ukraine, including training the Ukrainian armed forces and whatever is necessary to make sure that Ukraine can defend itself. But there is a third element, and the third element is the United States. The United States is now completely involved. And that involvement of the United States in securing the security guarantees is really extremely important. So that means that you now have a package in place, which is almost done. We have to nail the final details. But that will provide a situation where if Russia would ever think of attacking again post a long-term ceasefire or a peace deal, they will only think of this a couple of minutes and then let go, because they know the situation has changed dramatically since Minsk, and the reaction will be devastating. They will not do it.
Okay. All right, take a drink of water because I'm calling on a Danish MEP.
Oh, is that?
Stina Boss.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here with us today. And allow me to address you as the guy who's looking after all of us. And I just want you to notice, and I'm sure you have noticed it because it's been all over the place, that the people of Greenland, it's 56,000 people, are scared stiff. They're stressed, and they're more than just worried. You have put now also out there all the truths about Denmark has invested. We are all parts of NATO. We are all talking together. And yet, we have already an agreement. It's from 1951, you know that as well, between Denmark, the Kingdom of Denmark, and the US, allowing the US to deploy all the military forces they want. They had more than 1,000. Now they have 200. There are not one single Chinese or Russian ship around Greenland. Let that be stated as a fact. And there are, of course, also now conversations going on to try and make this go in a direction where we as allies, and I and my country and all the people in Greenland strongly believe that we are allies and that you are there to protect us. But please give us an indication of what can this alliance do if two countries within the alliance cannot agree. Thank you.
Yes, but Thank you so much for that very well put question. But you have to respect the fact that when there are discussions between allies, my role has to be to make sure we solve issues. And when it comes to the protection of the High North, that is my role. I can never comment on that. That's impossible in public. And what I'm doing, and with the US and Canada and all our allies in Europe, is to make sure that we not only concentrate about Greenland. This is an issue about the High North. This is an issue about the Arctic territory. Let's not be naive. Even if there are not that many ships sailing at the moment, we know that with the sea lanes opening up in the High North and the Arctic, and this is not only true for Greenland, this is true for the whole Arctic area. It's not only Russia active there, it is increasingly also China being active there. So when it comes to the Arctic region, we have to work together as an alliance, and that's exactly what we are doing, and we are now putting more details to the next step to make sure that we indeed can do that as a collective alliance. You can be sure of that.
But is it, sir, is it unthinkable, unimaginable, the words we used to use, that one ally could take up arms against another inside NATO?
Again, my role as Secretary General, I'm very clear. I never, ever comment when there are discussions within the alliance. We have discussions between Greece and Turkey. We have had discussions between other allies. What you then will see all my predecessors do, and myself, is never comment on that in public. You work behind the scenes, and when it comes to the issue at stake here, and I believe there is a bigger issue at stake here, and that is the defense of the High North, the defense of the Arctic area, there you can be sure that we do everything to protect the whole of the alliance. That's my role, to keep 1 billion people safe. And that is not only the eastern flank and the US and the southern flank, that is also the Arctic area.
You might want to take another drink because I'm calling on Andrew. Andrew Gray from Reuters, please. Stand up. He's way in the back. He's back there. You know him. There he is.
Thank you, Andrew Gray from Reuters, Secretary General. I will keep this one short. I'm not asking you to comment on specific discussions, as you've already made clear that you won't do that. But in general, is it acceptable for one NATO ally to threaten the use of force to take the territory of another?
Well, I think it's the same question in another. So I refer to the previous answer.
Oh, that was it? Okay. All right, this is going well. Next on my list is Malik Asmani.
Yes, well, dear Mark, it's quite strange, of course, to put also questions, because we have, of course, also some...
You're party colleagues, so...
yeah, party colleagues.
I planted this question, no, I didn't.
Yeah. Well, fair enough, then. I planted Andrew.
When you hear the question, Mark, it could be that people are thinking it, because I want to touch on another subject, and that is the situation in Iran. I would like to ask you about the shocking situation, of course, what we see with peaceful protesters are facing violent crackdowns, people are dying, and the only thing what they want is freedom. And I was wondering, how do you assess the current situation in Iran? What is your take also on the ongoing protest? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And of course, as NATO, we concentrate on the North Atlantic area. But let me try to answer the questions despite the fact that it's outside NATO territory. Because I think, and I hope we all agree, that what is happening in Iran is repellent. What the leadership is doing against its own population. People protesting peacefully to make their views clear. And let's not forget, democracy is not only parliaments. Yes, parliaments are very important, I can tell you. But it is not only parliaments. Democracy is parliaments, plus free media, plus the right to protest and to make your views known. This oppressive regime in Tehran is now applying massive force and massive violence against its own population. There are many reports of many people dying. I find it repellent. I can assure you that NATO allies are day in, day out navigating this crisis, in constant touch on this. But I think we can all agree that we wish the best for Iran, and particularly not for the leadership, but for the Iranian people.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the journalist row. Mina from Liga in Ukraine. I can't, it's very hard to see out there, sorry. Stand up, please, Mina.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Milana Golovany from Ukrainian media outlet Liga.net. Secretary General, after the Oreshnik ballistic missile hit on Lviv, the fire was visible near the Russian border. If Russia attack with the same missile NATO territory tomorrow, will NATO respond?
Yes, but we also respond now, because this is already terrible. The Oreshnik missiles are weapons of death and mass and destruction. And we have seen this now when they were used on Lviv the other day. And I find this terrible. We have seen last night, again, hundreds of drones and tens of missiles hitting Ukraine. And particularly now hitting the civilian infrastructure, innocent civilians. This has nothing to do with the combat on the front line. This is just creating panic and death among the general Ukrainian population. And it is evidence of the atrocities the Russians are willing to go to. So that is why I'm so inspired to try to do everything to make sure you guys have the interceptors necessary to take out the missiles wherever you can. And please, also here to the parliamentarians, work with your governments to dig deep in your stockpiles and to find the necessary interceptors for Patriot system, for NASAM system, for SAM-T systems, because they are urgently needed by the Ukrainians. This is why I agreed with President Trump on this Pearl initiative in July, because yes, Europe has a lot, but after 3-4 years of war, a lot of the stockpiles in Europe have been depleted, so we have to rely more on what is still in the stockpiles in the United States, and there's still, luckily, a lot left there, and that's crucial for Ukraine, paid for by European and Canadian allies. That's this Pearl initiative. This is why we are doing that, because your fight is our fight. You have to survive this war. We have to make sure that we can end this war as soon as possible and get to a full peace deal, or if necessary a long-term ceasefire, and to stop the fighting and the killing. By the way, let's not forget that the Russians at the moment are losing massive amounts of their soldiers thanks to the Ukrainian defense, the staunch Ukrainian defense. In months, this is 20 to 25,000 Russians dead. I'm not talking seriously wounded, killed, dead. 20 to 25,000 a month. When you compare that to the Afghan war in the 1980s, they lost 20,000 in 10 years. Now they lose these amounts and more in 1 month. So that's also unsustainable on their side. But you can be assured that is why I'm so much motivated to work with President Zelensky and European and Canadian and US allies to make sure you've got what you need to keep yourself strong in the fight, but also strong in the negotiating table.
Mr. Secretary General, does Ukraine need to win the war, not just survive it?
I mean, when you look at the moment, I think we have to bring Ukraine to a place where the president knows that security guarantees are in place, that the Russians will never attack again. But that then will lead to a very sensitive discussion about territory. And the sensitive discussion about territory is something only the Ukrainian people can decide. That's not for me to decide. But for the Ukrainian president and the Ukrainian leadership to be able to strike a deal one day with the Russians, hopefully. If the Russians come to the table and are willing to play ball, which they are not at the moment. Their reaction to the meeting in Paris was this Oreshnik missile, you could argue. So they are clearly at this moment not serious about negotiating. But we have to make sure the moment that these talks start, that the Ukrainian leadership has the guarantee that the security guarantees are in place so that the Russians will never try to attack again.
Okay, I have 3 more MEPs and 8 minutes. Hilde Wartwens. I don't usually like your short answers, but this time it's working out.
Well, thank you very much. And good to see you here, Mark, Secretary General. Goed u te zien hier. Ik moet u wel zeggen, ik vond...
It's great to see you here. I must say that as a Dutch leader, you did dare to say more.
Questions here, because that's the role also of the Parliament. We in this Parliament are very worried by some declarations. About some declarations of the US President. I cannot repeat them here, but we're very worried. The European citizens ask us really, take care of our security. Stine told you, you're the man we rely on for our security. But I think we should rely more on European security, on European countries who work together. Because you say, invest 5%. But if countries will do that at the same way they're doing, I don't think it will help a lot. So my question is very open and clear. How do you work towards a European pillar in NATO? How can we do that? Because European citizens ask us that. Be strategic autonomous. And personally, and my colleagues know that, I even go a step further. I really want a European army. And that's also what the citizens want in the future. But help us to create that European pillar. And what can we do in this Parliament to help you to create that in NATO? Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you.
Good to answer that question. But I am afraid I do not completely agree with the assessment or the solution. But you wanted me to be straightforward, so let me be straightforward, as we always do. First of all, let's not forget that in Europe, we reaped a peace dividend after the fall of the Berlin Wall, which was too big in hindsight. And therefore we have underinvested in our European armed forces. This is true for basically every European country, except maybe for Poland and the Baltics. That's fact number one. Fact number two is that I strongly believe that the transatlantic relationship with the United States, with Canada, is crucial, not only today, but also in the long term. And by the way, I'm going to defend President Trump. I am absolutely convinced. Who is here from Spain, who is here from Italy, from Belgium, from other countries, not nearly at 2% at the beginning of last year. All these countries have now reached 2%. Do you really believe you would have done that if Trump would not have been elected as President of the United States? No way you would have done that. And you had to do that not because of Trump, but because of your own security. Then the Hague Summit. Do you really believe, without President Trump, we would ever have agreed to spend in 2035, with a credible path together, 3.5% on core defense, 5% on overall defense? If he would not have been elected, no way we would have done it. And we have to do it not because of President Trump, but because, based on the analysis of our security and our defense plans, this is the minimum amount we need to spend to make sure we stay ahead of the Russians, we stay ahead of the Chinese, and stay ahead of the Chinese, the Russians, Iran, and North Korea working together. So I'm fine with everybody criticizing leaders within NATO. That's democracy. But I would just ask us to concentrate on the facts. And the fact says that without President Trump, we would have not taken those decisions. These 8-9 countries not on 2%. On 2% late last year. And the whole of the alliance committing to 5% defense spending. I would say that is thanks to President Trump. And I know you will all hate me now saying this, but this is what I believe. And I'm going to repeat that. And that's why we need a transatlantic relationship. And then on Europe. Europe is crucial. Europe is crucial. When I came in, I visited Ursula von der Leyen and we had a meeting, and it was fantastic because she was defense minister before. She knows everything. And she knows exactly the division of labor, that NATO is good at command and control and standards and capability targets, and that the EU has the convening power, the power to get like the 800 billion and 150 billion for SAFE. But also when it comes to the internal market, all the soft power the EU can muster. Why we have the European Union. And that working together is a very strong formula. So if we are going to repeat structures, command and control structures, and you have a whole hierarchy of European generals, we find it difficult today to fill all the senior officer positions within NATO. If you then have to replicate that on the European side, forget that you can ever do that. And the Russians will love it, because it is more complexity on our side, more time to debate, more discussions, whilst they try to attack us. And let's not forget, our security service are telling us that by 27, 29 or 31, the Russians are ready. to try something against us. At least they have the capability to do it. And my worry is if China would move on Taiwan, they will never do this alone. They will always force their junior partner, being one Vladimir Putin in Moscow, to move against us. And we have to be ready. And I would say let's be thankful for what Trump did, really encouraging us, maybe even stronger than encouraging us, to get to this 2%. For Belgium, 4 billion more than what you guys spent at the beginning of the year, thanks to Theo Franke and Bart de Wever and the coalition in the ruling Belgium at the moment. This is great news.
Okay, I've got two more. Marie-Agnes Strack-Zimmerman and Nathalie Loiseau is going to ask as well. Sorry.
Sorry.
Can I take you two together because we've got a couple?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Welcome.
I have 5 or 10 minutes more.
Okay.
Welcome on this side of the town. Tell your people in NATO we are not far away from NATO, so they are all welcome. Okay.
It's a 20-minute drive.
Yes. Just a question coming back to Greenland. In September there was a NATO exercise, Arctic Light, and we were observer with some colleagues. We traveled to Greenland, but without the US. Why? Because we are, I hope so, still partners.
Hey, but here, of course, the Danish question was interesting, referring back to the 1951 treaty between Denmark and the United States. I think you said over 1,000. I believe the US had at one point thousands of Americans present in Greenland. At the moment, it's 150 on a rotational basis. And Denmark is completely relaxed about the fact that the US might in the future have much more presence in Greenland than they have at the moment.
Which begs the question of why Trump is making these threats.
And that is why I tell you that it is so good that as an alliance, we not only concentrate on Greenland, we concentrate on the whole of the High North. Because this is not only Greenland. This is also Iceland, this is Finland, this is Norway, this is Sweden, this is Canada, this is the United States. It is making sure that the whole of the Arctic area is safe. And we always look at the map, of course, the Mercator map as we have it since 1600, as we see it. But when you look at it from above, you can see the threats which might emerge if these sea lanes open up in the coming years.
Okay, she's not happy with that. Well, but we're running out of time.
Not leave this room if you're not happy. That's the deal.
Oh.
Yeah, but not in all exercises, all nations always participate. But the US is really very active in many exercises in Europe and of course, in NATO territory.
All right, Natalie, it's up to you.
So I'm not going to torture you, Mr. Secretary General, about Greenland or about Donald Trump. I want to tease you about something that's happening within NATO under your leadership. Before, there was a strong commitment of NATO to fight against FIMIs, disinformation, information manipulation. I haven't heard or I haven't noticed that FIMIs are decreasing worldwide, coming from Russia, but also from other nations like Iran or China.
So Natalie,
why on earth
foreign interference and manipulation?
Yes. So why on earth is NATO decreasing its efforts to fight against information manipulation right now?
Well, let me tell you, what we are doing is mainstreaming all this work, basically when it comes to hybrid, cyber, misinformation, everything. We have mainstreamed this because as an alliance, and this is true for each of the individual allies, it's also true for the alliance as a whole, we have to step up and to make sure that when it comes to cyber, hybrid, etc., we have to be the best in class. And that's exactly what we are doing. Of course, the Russians love us to talk about that, so I don't do this the whole day, but I can assure you that all allies are working at this extremely hard to make sure we not only can defend ourselves in the conventional way, but also when it comes to this broader hybrid and cyber domain.
And can you assure everyone that despite the reorganization at NATO headquarters, that this has not been kicked down the priority list?
What we have done in the reorganization at NATO headquarters is we have mainstreamed everything. Because what I always hated when I was in national government, that you would have one minister responsible, for example, for women affairs or for some other specific issue. And then the rest of the cabinet would say, yeah, but he or she is responsible for this, so we don't have to care. And what we have done in the reorganization is to mainstream all these activities and work streams.
Because the cognitive domain is definitely a warfare domain these days, isn't it?
It is
Everything we
all
do.
interlinked, so
Yeah.
you cannot separate the one from the other.
All right. Well, this is, I'm getting the signal that I have to wrap up. Thank you so much for the extra time, Mr. Secretary General. That was really a treat, and I think this was really a conversation that we needed to have to start off 2026. Everybody's wondering about this, and Valérie is going to come back. Yes, and I'm going to let you go. Thank you.
Chairing the whole day?
I am.
Okay,
You're going to stick around? Thank you so much. Thanks. No, it was a pleasure. So, you guys go. Thank you, guys. Thanks. Yes. So that was a great way to kick off. I mean, I really did my best, everyone. He's really good. And thank you for your involvement. So now we are going to start with our panels. The first one is going to be the same topics we've been talking about, security and defense. We're just going to dive a bit deeper with our panelists as soon as you see this short video.
2025 was a critical year for European defense. Europe is stepping up together with NATO to provide security and peace. With our 27 EU member states, we hold the power of collaboration like no one else. Together, we are strong. But to improve our defense jointly, we need actual teamwork. We must agree on when to intervene and protect others, increase the public support for collective defense, and find a way to respond to the fragmenting global security order. Emerging technologies will play a crucial role in our European defense strategies. We cannot wait any longer to respond to the needs of the industry and, above all else, to the worries of our 450 million citizens.
And to discuss these priorities, I'd like to welcome to the stage my panelists, Marie-Agnes Strack-Zimmermann, who you, of course, heard from earlier. She is the chair of the Security and Defense Committee. Thank you. I believe you're sitting here. Camille Grant. He is a former NATO official in charge of defense investment, now the Secretary General of the European Aerospace Security and Defense Industries Association, ASD. Thank you for coming. And Robert Ondřejček, the Executive Director of the European Leadership Network and also a former State Secretary for Defense in the Slovak government. Thank you very much for being here. So, Marie-Agnes, we'll start with you. I mean, you, not surprisingly, have made a lot of statements on social media about the situation with President Trump, with the United States. And one of the things you said is that anyone who believes the USA under the current government would have even the slightest interest in democracy and freedom is out of touch with reality. So, as the chair of the Security and Defense Committee, how is this propelling you to do your work? And how much can you do? I mean, is it possible to create a self-sufficient European pillar of defense if the United States really does withdraw its support?
First of all, thank you very much. Great to be here, and I think it's great to be here with our Ukraine friends, and you could see the color of Europe in Ukraine. It's the same color, so you never forget. There will be coming the time that Ukraine will be a member of the European Parliament, and we work for this. You know, if you compare the situation 1.5 years ago, nobody in Europe really were talking about security questions because we thought that even we have discussions with the United States, they will be there in case of a case. And now we could see, and you could hear it again from the General Secretary, this time is really over. And in the last year, first of all, we create a full-fledged committee for the first time. And it's very important that we have a commissioner who is responsible for security and space. We have a vice president in this house. He's responsible for cyber security. So you could see in this history of the European Union, the first time everybody realized we have to do our job. And of course, we have to start with all colleagues in the parliament to do it, because we are elected in our countries and we go back to our countries and we have to explain people, hey, come on, what's going on? We are 23 countries, European EU countries in NATO, and we have to do more. And it's not only, of course, a question of money, it's a question of mindset. And so our job is to work together, because we know we have not one foreign policy. It depends a little bit, of course. If you are living in a country with a Russian border, and I have colleagues who grown up in the Soviet Union, also Kaja Kallas, so they really know what's going on. And we have countries who are far away, or they have facing the Mediterranean Sea. You know, it depends a little bit where you live. Or I'm coming from Germany. We are in the middle of Europe. But our foreign president, it's 20 years ago, he said, lucky Germans, we have only friends. Every border, it's nice. Okay. So it depends a little bit where you live.
A lot, actually.
And so we have to learn that we work together, and it's very important to start in the parliament, because we change the mindset. And this is really, really, really important.
But just to follow up on that, Commissioner Kubilius just gave a speech in Sweden over the weekend, suggesting once again that, you know, with a U.S. withdrawal, a potential U.S. withdrawal, do you need a European army? And, you know, does Europe really need to create a separate structure? He's calling for a European Security Council.
It's not a separate structure. You know, our backbone of security is NATO. There is no doubt about it. And NATO has a plan for every country. If there is a situation that Article 5, we need everybody. So every country has to know what the country has to do. But we are 29 European countries, with Great Britain, Norway, etc. And so we are 29 European countries in NATO, and then you have US, you have Canada and Turkey. And I think it's time that we create a really a European pillar, a strong pillar in NATO. It's not a concurrence. Yes, it's also important, and I think we have to be more self-confident, and we have to create in NATO a great pillar.
I think Canada wants to be with you.
Yes, and
so
it's great because we have the program of SAFE.
Yeah.
So the idea is common procurement. It's very important that we have to stop that every country will do their own job. I mean, the problem is we are not a defense union. We are 27 countries with every country has defense minister, have an army. Everybody is buying something, and so we try to start doing again and do it together. I think this is really important. And you could see that Canada is very close to us. And if you ask me, I think we have to think about it and really to work very, very close, not only to Canada. We work close to Australia, to New Zealand, to Japan, to South Korea, even there in the Indo-Pacific, because we need really friends in this democratic world, because this war in Ukraine affects the whole world. It's our issue in Europe, but it affects the whole world. And so we need more partners, and it's wonderful that Canada is close by.
True. Camille, turning to you, I mean, your job was to get Europeans to spend more while you were at NATO in charge of defense investment. But I want to start with, I can't possibly let you talk just about those issues with all of your years in NATO. And I really, I would like if you could to share with us what you sense or what you're hearing is happening in the halls at NATO. There's no formal discussion of a potential U.S. takeover of Greenland. I know that at the NAC last week that was not brought up, only Arctic security. But what is really happening behind the scenes? How uncomfortable are the allies with this situation? And then, onto your current job, is this distracting them? Is this distracting governments from doing what they've pledged to do, which is spend 5%, which is improve their procurement practices, improve their own production?
First of all, thank you for the invitation. It's really great to be here, and it's a fascinating conversation we're having on a very special beginning of the year. You know, there's so much happening that there's.
You still use euphemism.
Yeah, we use euphemism to say that there is a muzzle velocity of event that is coming to us, and that sort of forces us to think, reassess, find solutions, address problems. To go straight to your question, and of course it's much easier as a former NATO official than as a NATO official to answer that question. The first thing is I have lots of sympathy for the situation Mark Rutte was in the sense that as a NATO official, the last thing you want is to comment on disputes amongst allies, whether they are petty disputes or very dramatic disputes like the one we're facing. So it is an extraordinarily complicated situation, and it is a fact that the first thing I learned as a NATO official was to avoid commenting on what allies were doing. Having said this, I think it is also fair to recognize that this is a bit unprecedented. There has been disputes between Greece and Turkey. More recently, I remember in my days at NATO, strong tensions between Turkey and France that were very, very, not necessarily on everybody's mind, but certainly on the minds of a number of allies. Having said this, it is what is peculiar with the current moment is that it involves the United States, which is the linchpin of this transatlantic alliance. So we can't, it's very difficult to just say, oh, it's another small dispute in a corner somewhere. So I think it really forces us to think about the transatlantic alliance, of it, how it works. And I think there is a fair concern that is not publicly expressed by the allies that this is undermining the strength of the alliance. And I think we have to be, at least as commentators, honest about this, that it is something that is creating a serious stress test. So everybody hopes that this will eventually land somewhere that is acceptable and that is manageable. And there were such statements before, but the repetition of these statements and so on is of great concern, and we have to be honest about that. And I find it concerning also to see that when you see the range of options that a number of European countries are flagging, discussing privately or publicly, you get a very, very serious. You see how serious is the situation, and I don't think we should sort of downplay it too much. Secondly, in terms, and I would say secondly, and to go straight to your second question, that it is a problem that it distracts us from very serious things that are happening right now. The situation in Ukraine is of great concern to me. I really hope that we would be, at the moment, finding ways to protect the Ukrainian skies, to help the Ukrainians in this. And in a way, what should have been the headline news of last week, which was the Coalition of the Willing meeting and an effort to realign all of the supporters of Ukraine in a single position on this, has become a bit of a sideshow to this Greenland conversation. So I find it concerning. Secondly, I also find it concerning, and there I go to the core of my current work, is that and Mark Rutte rightly reminded us that it's really important to spend more and to be very focused on delivering capabilities. And Marie-Agnes just stressed the role that the European Union is playing in this regard more and more. I think we have to get this right. And again, having a situation where we suddenly are caught between those who say, oh my God, we can't defend ourselves without the United States, and where is the United States? And those who say, oh, but the United States is becoming a threat, we have to think about that. This is absurd. So we should
Which part is absurd?
To be caught in this silly conversation instead of doing what we have to do there. What we need to do is to put our act together. So I'll come with my closing point on this, which is, I think we know what we have to do. The good news part is that the to-do list is more or less the same, whether we have a friendly United States, a United States that neglects Europe, or a United States that is semi-hostile. That is a Europe that is much more capable of defending itself by itself, that is much more capable of delivering the technologies and the capabilities that we need, and that is eventually in a position to deter and counter the threats, the fairly grave threats that are put to European security by the Russian Federation in particular. And I think this is the sort of conversation that I would like to see us focus on, in the sense that we have to deliver that, I would say, no matter what happens with Trump. And let's hope that the transatlantic alliance endures, that we restore a trust and good relationship with the US. But I believe and that there is no US administration, even after Trump, that will be the good old ally like in the old days. The US is more focused on the Indo-Pacific, it's more focused on itself, it's more ignorant of European affairs, and part of it is legitimate. Let's be fair about this. So we have to be much more in charge of this, and then we have to do what it takes to do that. And the big news is we have to do it super fast and possibly in not such an orderly fashion as we would have hoped for.
Yeah, so no good news there.
I think again, I am very confident, and I've looked into this for years, in the ability of the Europeans to deliver the technologies, to deliver the equipment. If you look at what would have been a big topic in a much quieter age a year ago, of where are we on the delivery of 155 caliber ammunition rounds for Ukraine, we don't discuss it anymore because this has been fixed, and this has not been fixed by the Americans. It has been fixed by European governments and European industry that has put its act together in ramping up production to a point where this is, I mean, there's of course, it's never perfect, the situation is never perfect, but it's no longer the sort of shortages that we were facing a year ago. I think we can do the same thing when it comes to air defense over time, that we can do the same thing when it comes to a number of domains. And I really believe that we need to move there. And on that, I remain an optimist in the sense that I do trust the idea that a Europe that is as, 12 times the GDP of the Russian Federation, 3 times the number of soldiers, and so on and so forth, and a defense spending that is 3 times larger. Okay, in purchase power parity, you would say it's roughly the same, but why couldn't we deter that and also assist Ukraine in the current conflict? So those things are within our reach, and hopefully with the Americans. And if it has to be with an America that is not as reliable as we would like it to be, then we have to move forward nevertheless.
Okay, so be it. Robert, coming to you, the only member on this panel that actually comes from the eastern flank. Do you feel that NATO is able to do what it has promised your country and the others, these 8 countries that, for example, have the battle groups? Do Slovaks feel like they are safe? And I know that you're not only speaking for Slovakia here, you're obviously based in London now, so you can probably take a wider view as well.
Yep. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here today. Yes, indeed, I'm double-headed today because I'm representing a London-based European organization, but I'm also a Slovak citizen, and I used to be part of the Slovak government. Indeed, after the annexation of Crimea and after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia in 2022, the steps taken by NATO, including deployments of the battle groups to the eastern flank countries from Estonia to Bulgaria, were absolutely reassuring. The political declarations of the allies, including the United States and the major European allies, were absolutely reassuring. And we perceived in the eastern flank countries, we perceived absolutely positively that countries like Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and Slovakia, they became part of our security, not only at the declaratory level, but they, as you mentioned, they deployed their battle groups to eastern flank countries. So in Estonia, it's Britons, in Latvia, it's Canadians, in Lithuania, it's Germans, in Poland, it's Americans, Slovakia, Spaniards, Hungary, it's Hungarians. It's a specific issue. In Romania, it's France, and in Bulgaria, it's Italians. And we didn't witness it after the end of the Cold War, obviously. So we saw some kind of military build-up, but we still experienced some kind of two subgroups within NATO. The Western European part, where in Germany, Italy, the United Kingdom, we saw very robust military presence by the United States and other allies. But in Eastern flank countries, we didn't have anything like this. So after the annexation of Crimea, and even more after the full-scale invasion, we felt that the alliance and the allied reactions were appropriate, I would say. And it's not only about better goods, but air policing and other kinds of deployments, of course. So the countries of the region belong to the most pro-Atlantic countries within the NATO. But indeed, we see that the world is changing, obviously. It's a banality. But the American approach towards NATO is changing. On one hand, it's a natural process, this pivot towards the Indo-Pacific, which started not by President Trump, but it started probably 20 years ago when Donald Rumsfeld, as defense secretary, ordered to rebalance the American global naval power towards the Pacific. So it's a long-term process which is going on. But we never questioned the strength of the Article 5. And obviously it's not reassuring when we need to ask that whether the Article 5 is still valid, because we want to believe that it's valid because it's still a cornerstone of our security. It's good that the European part of the alliance is waking up, or woke up actually already, that the military capabilities are being strengthened. And what I would just say a few more words about Camille's remarks on the industry. This is absolutely important because the Ukraine war has showed us that the mass, the numbers are absolutely important. So the armies of yesterday, which were those armies fighting in Iraq or Afghanistan or expeditionary wars, are simply not sufficient for countering the Russian threat. So we need massive defense industry. We need massive reserve forces. We need capabilities to build or to produce ammunition. So it's a long-term preparation, which is backing the Article 5. So the political support of the Article 5 is important, but if it's supported by the defense industry and defense capabilities, it's much more reassuring, to be honest.
And do you feel that Slovaks do question Article 5 now? I mean, you wouldn't be one of the countries up first on Donald Trump's list that he would go and help.
If we talk about the Slovak population, I don't think so that we are some exemption within the region. So if you ask me about the current Slovak foreign policy, there is a difference between the views of the Slovak population and the current Slovak foreign policy. I'm think tanker, so I can talk freely, absolutely. The majority of Slovak population supports the European Union or Slovakia's position in the European Union. The majority of Slovak population supports the membership of Slovakia within NATO. So, of course, there are some regional differences, but we are an absolutely pro-European country.
Not pro-Ukraine, though.
Even pro-Ukrainian. I mean,
well, the government has cut off support to Ukraine.
I mean, there is a difference between country and population, obviously. Yeah. So, if you ask me about the positions of the current Slovak government vis-à-vis Ukraine, I mean, I don't think so that it goes hand in hand with Slovak national interest, because the Slovak national interest is to have a free, independent Ukraine in its territorial, with its territorial integrity. So this is our national interest. This is our moral obligation. We are children of the 1989 revolution, Velvet Revolution. Plus, it's a security interest of my country.
Sorry, I just have to keep an eye on our time. I want to open the floor to the audience. Does anyone have a question? Please raise your hand. Stand up, and we will get you a mic. I don't see any. Oh, there. Yes. Back to Stina.
Thank you, and thanks to all of you for having such an insightful conversation. I want to come back to the question of, can we do it? And I really liked your words. And I also agree that, even with what Mr. Rüde said, that, this is also a wake-up call. And as much as I do not appreciate everything that Mr. Trump is up to, the fact that he has waken us all up is probably okay. But I would like for you to elaborate. What would it take? I mean, we are here, we are a parliament, we can take initiatives, we can influence in our home countries and so on and so forth. Really down to earth, what would it take to get us from where we are? And this is also about structures in command and all this, and to where we want to be. Just dream about it and see where that takes us.
Go.
The colleagues might want to add to that. I think, first of all, and there I think what has happened in NATO is important. It requires a sustained investment. We sort of suddenly discover, as if it were a surprise, that spending money on defense delivers the defense capabilities. For years, there was this sort of bizarre statement that we could do smart defense, that we could do all sorts of things do more with less. That was not true. That was a nice, wrap up.
But you talked about it.
No, I never.
Did you never say those
words? No, I never said those words. I never argued that you could do more with less. You could do things in a smarter fashion with the same money that sometimes cooperation could deliver. Second thing is in terms of, so it means sustained effort over a decade, and then we'll see where we are and if the situation has improved to the point where we can change things. Second thing is that, is a sort of, if you ask my to-do list, and again, I'm fairly optimistic that this is achievable. Of course, not exactly with the same timeline on every item. I mean, there is an issue where the Europeans have not been good, which is the issue of what the military call readiness. So how can we be faster and readier? And that requires a bit of, boring things, ammunition and spare parts. It requires, and then it requires a bit of mass to rebuild a military that is consistent with the current security environment. I'm not calling for reintroducing the military service across Europe. In some countries, it seems to be a logical path. In others, there is a debate on what's the best solution to attract more people in the military. We are not going back to Cold War armies, but we certainly need to rebuild this mass and readiness. Thirdly, and this is where it becomes complicated, is there is what, again, we call enablers, the sort of capabilities that to this day, the US was, if not the only one, at least the only one to provide in large quantities. The sort of, airborne tankers, airborne surveillance capabilities, maritime patrol aircraft, large drones, all of these things, there is a very, very there is a form of dependency on US assets. There, NATO has done a list. I think the Commission is also working on delivering these capabilities, on focusing the effort on this. And I think, honestly, Commissioner Kubilius and the Commission is doing a good job at doing both the immediate, helping on the immediate requirement front and also helping on this slightly longer term demands, because this is what would enable us. And it's not, it's not happening overnight, but it's a matter of a few years to really turn a corner. When I was at NATO, we had a project on airborne tankers. We did this together with the European Defence Agency. There was a joint sort of NATO-EU endeavor. We eventually delivered a fleet of tankers that is up and running today, that is serving Denmark and many other countries, with a European plane, by the way, and that is has significantly increased on a capability on which not so long ago at the time of Libya, we heavily relied on American assets. So this is something where we changed this in a matter of a few years. We now have one of those that has been paid by Luxembourg, that doesn't have an air force, but has paid for a tanker. You know, those things happen and make a real difference. And I want to see that happening with other critical enablers where we are more dependent. And finally, there is a fairly complex issue, which is the whole command and control system, the intelligence. And there, again, we need to do more in terms of technology. We need to be more, when it comes to space, when it comes to fusing the data that comes from space assets, from land assets and all of that. And this is a very complex endeavor. NATO is traditionally a good framework to build these sort of joint things because you want to be fully interoperable on this. I think the European Union can bring lots of bricks and maybe most of the bricks of the wall, and then we need to make sure that it's well glued together. But so that we reduce the reliance. That is probably more of a sort of decade endeavor if we vis-à-vis the US. But I can guarantee that we can make a difference tomorrow if we do in a matter of a year or so. You look at. Let me just give one last example. By the way, not a company that is one of my companies, so I feel completely comfortable of naming them. You take something like satellite communications. Everyone's like, oh my God, Starlink, and only Mr. Musk, he holds the key to this. There is a pretty good solution developed by Eutelsat that is a European solution that is, not massively deployed, but that basically can fix a large portion of the problem overnight and much more if we decide to invest into this. So again, what I want to convey is a message of the fact that we master 98% of the technologies that we need, that we have an industrial ramp-up of an unprecedented scale that is happening, and that there is no reason why, over a matter of a few years, we cannot fix a lot of the problems that we have identified. But it requires a sustained effort and a bit of political will to move at pace and to do this. And again, most of that we would have to do anyways. And maybe there would be more of a focus on the latter things if we are operating in a world with less or no America versus a world in which we have a sort of stable alliance.
And Maria-Agnes, when we talk about readiness, of course, I involuntarily but purposefully looked at you. Germany had a huge problem with this. Germany was sort of the laughing stock when it came to readiness in terms of even the simplest things like uniforms, equipment, and training. I mean, is this something that, as a former member of the Bundestag, you believe that Germany is taking seriously now? This is a very important pillar of NATO ever having the European force that it needs.
It's a good question. And we have a new government, a new chancellor, and I think if you compare it 1 year ago, yes, it's a big change. First of all, the money.
Yeah.
I mean, now we have a debt of 1 billion, 100 billion. It's unbelievable. But it's not only a question of money. It's a question you just said that we have a discussion about, because if you need a really strong army, you need people, you need soldiers. I mean, without soldiers, it's critical. So we have this discussion. But if you compare the discussion in the public opinion, in the public society 1 year ago, there is one. And there is a big majority in Germany that we have to do more, that we are willing to do more. But of course, I just said that if you're living in a country with a Russian border, I mean, if I ask my friends from Finland or from the Baltic states, it's a big difference. But maybe I want to add something, because it's also the question that we have. We need a better coordination between the countries. And for example, look, we are now on a good way for the military mobility. Because if you have to transport troops or weapons or however from west to east, we have a corridor, a NATO corridor, 3 of them, and we have to, for the transportation, it's very, very important to find new rules, because we have too many rules and we have a lot of borders. And so we are working very close together with the TRAN committee. It's really a good relationship, because we have to solve the problem that, for example, if you deliver ammunition from Netherlands to the Baltic states, then you have a lot of borders and you have always a declaration. 6 weeks.
Multiple declarations.
Yeah, border declaration. 6 weeks before.
Yeah.
Come on. If something will attack us, it's ridiculous. Oh, 6 weeks before, we have to go this, we have to go this. So we have to change a lot, and we are on a good way to do it. And this is really important for everybody to know, that we need a kind of internal market also for military stuff. And this is also, advantage for civil society. So I think that we are on a good way, of course, but we have to speed up. There is no doubt about it. And Germany knows what they have to do, and Germany is a big country. But of course, in the government, we have still colleagues there who are living on the moon, or I don't know where they live, but we have discussions. Okay, so we have to invite them to go to Ukraine, then they know what happens there. And I think this is very important.
Yes, and military mobility is being taken seriously now, I think for the first time since I've been in Brussels, with a plan by the European Union. It used to be something that was talked about, and then the budgets were reduced dramatically, which meant you couldn't really do anything. I mean, did you want to talk about that, Robert? Is this something you're focused on?
Yes, thank you very much. Being a state secretary is one of my responsibilities to manage this military mobility issue back to Slovakia. And basically there were two serious problems. One is the legal context. Indeed, to take any significant reinforcements from Belgian or Dutch harbors to the Baltics or Eastern Poland, you require to go through tons of legal procedures, which slows the process down very much. But the second thing, which is also very important, the infrastructure itself. Simply for example, the civilian military infrastructure in Central Europe was tailored for a completely different type of armies. Some bridges in Central Europe are not strong enough to handle the main battle tanks which are produced by Western European countries, so the French, British, German or American main battle tanks, because the traditional Soviet tanks, the T-72s and the others, are lighter. So the bridges in our region are simply not strong enough to maintain this pressure. So it has so many different technical details, so legal details and plus infrastructure plus technical details. And the second thing is about messes, again, what Kami mentioned already. Going back to state secretary times, we were discussing the so-called days of supplies. So how many days our armies are ready and prepared to fight, and for how many days we have stocks and reserves to support our armies in case of a full-scale war. And there were some very minimum requirement of 30 days. And the majority of countries in our region failed to meet even this 30 days requirement. It means that a decade ago, we were not able to fight a war for a month, a huge territorial defense war for a month. So, I mean, those informations are public already.
We are not about our own. I wouldn't.
No,
I would
the situation.
Never say,
the time being, the situation is much better, obviously.
Yes, okay.
So, yeah.
But tell all our
It wasn't
enemies,
it's not a secret.
No, but it's not a secret. But I think we have to. No, really, we have to explain everybody. We could change everything. It's just a question to do.
Yeah.
And there is
no, but
absolutely
there was a question what we can do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes, but it's really important, because to say, okay, we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that. This is not the answer, because we could do it if we want. And for example, we have this omnibus, I think it's a big chance for civil society too, because if we are successful in military question, to speed up, less rules, more money, better economy. And better economy for Europe is less rules, and that people come to invest in Europe. And I think we have to tell a positive story, a good story. I mean, we are a fantastic continent. We work together not only in the European Union, also with our friends in Great Britain, in Norway, in Iceland. So whole Europe. And I think we have to stop this me. You know what I mean? We have really to go forward, and I think we could do it. Let's talk a really good story, and I'm absolutely like Hilde. She's always talking about the European army. Maybe somebody would say also NATO, oh stop, come on, don't think about it. Yes, we have to talk about it. Maybe it's in a few years, maybe in 10 years, but we have to talk. And as German, we working very close to the Netherlands. Germans and Netherlands army are really, I mean, you could see the different uniform, that's it, but they're really working together.
And speaking of military mobility, you've actually set up a joint project that was a perfect
and we
model.
could do it, you know, every country could say, okay, if the Germans and France, the Germans and Netherlands working together, so maybe other countries will come to this group, step by step. But we need this idea that we are one Europe, we are one continent, and we are, of course, we need, maybe our children, our grandchildren, we need a European army in NATO.
Cami, you wanted to say something, and then we do have a question.
I'll try to be very practical. I very much agree with what has been said by Robert and Marion on what needs to be done, and we are entering, and I take advantage of being in the European Parliament, we are entering in the discussion on the MFF, on the trilogue. I happen to have been involved, seen from NATO, in the previous round. I do remember that in the last 2 days of the discussions on the MFF, the whole military mobility package was slashed
by the Finns
by 70%. Including by those who were promoting it initially, because they were frugals. So it was,
That's true.
But also by others who preferred that there should be unnamed others who said they preferred that there should be some sort of a green railway through the Alps. I'm not naming anyone amongst EU countries. But ultimately, I think we need to make sure we avoid this time. There is a very, very clear need to deliver on military mobility, and I'm very much welcome the fact that Sede and Tran are working hands in glove together to deliver on this, because this is of critical importance on the regulatory front and on the infrastructure front. I really hope that we will see a very significant push to bolster Of course, the MFF is not going to solve the problems of the entire, for the defense of Europe on its own. It is primarily a responsibility of the member states, and they have to, that's why I insisted on their role. But it is very critical that it is there, and that we don't lose the eye on the ball in that process for whatever good or very bad reason in the end game. So that's going to be a very important conversation in the coming year. And really, I think we're all trying to convey a positive message in the fairly doom and gloom moment that we're in when we look around, which is that I genuinely believe that the Europeans are capable of delivering a lot. That it is absurd to say that we are not capable of delivering on the defense technology when we have the most successful aerospace industry in the world that is, there. So those are the same types of skills from an industrial and technological perspective that we're looking at. So the story is can be very positive. We have to look at issues that are maybe were a bit under the radar in terms of digital capabilities and technologies and all of that. But I think there is a case to be made that we can do. I'm tempted to use 2 American mottos, which is the yes we can and the just do it, because I think it's just and every day we delay or debate the fact that we can't do it. We are losing time. So if we had decided to move on certain of these projects 5 years ago, we would be in a better situation today.
True. Okay, we have another question from the audience, and that will probably be our last one. Please introduce yourself, sir.
Thank you for Renew organizing this event. Very interesting discussions. My name is Sebastian Tynkkynen. I'm MEP from Finland. Here in the EU, we like to talk about the concept called peace through strength. But what I see is that there's only one country in the world who is actually following this concept. Last summer, US weakened Iran by hitting their nuclear sites. Then Trump also made the peace plan for Israel and Gaza, and they are now following that. They took dictator out of Venezuela just a while ago. And now that there are mass executions in Iran happening when they try to get freed citizens in this country, EU is condemning what's happening. Trump is saying, we are sending help. My question for the distinguished panelists is that should Europe, coalition of willing NATO countries in Europe, single European countries, whatever is the format, should we intervene more to nearby areas militarily? Say that if you do the mass executions in Iran, we will attack you. Or if they evict people in Azerbaijan from Karabakh, we will come at you. Should we take more responsibility, or is it also only US who has to do these projects nearby us? Thank you very much.
I think that's probably a question for you as a lawmaker, yeah?
First of all, it helps if you are a military power. I mean, it helps, but I think it's not only a question of military power in, for example, Iran. I think that this European Union has to say something and to stand behind the women 2 years, 3 years ago, and the people in Iran. And I think it's very good that the president of the European Union, Metsola, said that everybody, diplomats from Tehran, all these guys are not any more welcome here in this house. I think we have to be really clear. And it's not only a question of military question, it's also a question of economy. You know, I know, and this is really a shame, I know many companies all over Europe who are still making deals with Russia. Can you believe it? It's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. And I think we have to start to be consequent, to stop it. And, you know, personally, I saw this list, and there are also German companies, and for me, I stopped buying, I mean, it's only me. I stopped buying anything from companies who are still making business with Russia. And I think it's very important also to have the discussion about Iran, because I know that we have still international fairs in different countries in Europe who are making deals or context to this government of Iran. We have to stop it. So it's not only a question of military, it's a question of economic situation, it's a question to say we have to stop and we have to help people, and we will help the people in Iran if we stop to make business with these guys in this government. And, for example, that we know that there are many people coming from Tehran, what's in English, now I'm looking for the right word, who are terrorists coming to Europe with their money, Garda,
Oh, the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard Council.
Thank you very much, yes. I mean, there are all of them are here in Europe. What's going on? There are terrorists, and we have to stop it. And you could stop it if you take your money. Then they realize what's going on. It's not only a question of military. I think.
Either of you want to weigh in on that question?
Just one thought. You know, an old friend of mine used to say that the best way to show resolved is simply to be resolved. So the point is not to show it, is to do it. So, of course, I think the others have become too used to the fact that the EU talks the talk but doesn't walk the walk. And so therefore they sort of ignore the statements and look to Washington or whatever. I think we need to be able to walk the walk, which is not always in the military domain. I'm not advocating for strikes on Iran or whatever, but to demonstrate the ability to simply be very, very clear that there are certain things that we won't let go, and that works with our with foes, and that works with allies to a degree. So the point is to be crystal clear on what, and there I think there is a need to sort of, you know, we've been talking a lot about a geopolitical Europe, a geopolitical commission and all of that. We see progress, but we still have to, you know, push it to the next level on a number of issues, some of them that you were mentioning, but the relationship to Russia is a case in point, and the way we address other challenges in our vicinity, including Iran, are good examples. It has to be an end on this. Maybe there is a European way. It doesn't have to be the American way of ending things, you know, and I'm not necessarily comfortable with some of the statements that make everything revolve around natural resources and all of that. But there is I think we can be much clearer and much firmer and build a message that is a message of strength in our own way. And if I may, in that context, pay a tribute to the Finns, in that context, in the relationship with Moscow, you've always managed to be very clear, very firm on what was not acceptable, while not necessarily being aggressive in the way you were formulating it.
Do we have any other questions?
Thank you.
Robert, yes,
just a very short remark. Actually, if you talk about peace through strength, there is a country where they talk less, but they'll do a lot, and this is Finland. I mean, you have one of the most capable artillery forces in Europe. You have a very well elaborated reservist plan. You have a deterrence force. If you talk about the air forces with long-range SAR capabilities, so it's really a regional. Obviously, it's not a great power, but it's in terms of capabilities, Finland is doing much more than you would imagine, or anybody would imagine, just thinking about the size of the country. So this is one of the ways how to exercise peace through strength. So they don't talk
be afraid,
a lot, but
be prepared.
Yeah.
That's their motto. Okay, we're going to take one last question and then try to get ourselves back on schedule a little bit. Yes, ma'am?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Lucia Jar. I'm MEP from Slovakia, Progressive Slovakia. The first time I started to work in defense, it was in the office of former State Secretary Mr. Ondrejčák, so good to have you back here. I want to come back to some points that you've made regarding Europe not walking the walk, just doing the talk. Also about the ambitions that we have or not have. I am one of the reporters for the Defense Omnibus. I'm also working on MFF, especially on the security financing. And every time we do the negotiations here, and Maria Agnes will confirm that, the ambition that is coming, even from the Commission, is pretty high. The Parliament is also concurring. We do pretty well in that. Then we go back to negotiation table and negotiate with member states, and here we are. So I think the European Union is walking the walk. It's incredibly ambitious in many projects that have been mentioned here. Of course, there are rooms for improvement. We can discuss that. But the national governments are absolutely putting all kinds of constraints in front of all these negotiations, and sorry, but this has to be said, to speed up all that process, to really invest in the places that we want to. So my question here is how to stop being negative, something that Maria Agnes was saying, but also tell the truth that European Union has certain capacities and opportunities to do things. It's not the EU that is stopping the progress. Often are the national governments, and this has to be underlined very much, the national governments are often hindering this development.
So we will use this as our final round of remarks. Use this as
it's very important, and I just said it at the beginning. We are not a defense union, so we need every government, and have different views. It has a lot of reasons, but it's absolutely true, because we are really, I mean, in our defense committee there are 43 colleagues, and I could say that we really work together above parties and countries, because we know that it's very important working together if we want still alive. So we need the governments at home, and this is a problem, but we have to make the pressure. I mean, we are here, and we are representing our country, so we have to go back and tell them what they have to do. And otherwise, this European Union has a huge problem, and I think we have always to remember that this European Union is the biggest peace project in the world and in history of the world. After the World War II, 81 years ago, we worked together. It's unbelievable. I think our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents would be happy to see this. And, 80 years, it's nothing. So it's hard to create this union. It's very easy to destroy it. And we have to realize that our job is we have to go into our countries, tell our governments, and explain them what they have to do, and also the public opinion. We have to explain people that when people told me, oh, the past was so nice and everybody was so fine, this is bullshit. Because now we know everything in life and real time. Something happens and we realize it immediately. So I think it's a big chance. We have to do it. We will do it. And for sure, we are ready. So now we have to explain our countries that they have, and to Finland, of course. Your country, I mean, your border to Russia, 1,500 kilometers. And I remember in the Cold War, when the front was right in the middle of Germany, it was a totally different discussion 35 years ago. So there is no Cold War anymore. It's a hot war. We are in war, in cyber war. We could see what happens all over, and the hybrid war, and so there is really no time to lose. We have to work. So thank you very much also for this panel. Yeah. It's really, really important. It's no joke anymore. It's the reality. Welcome in reality. But we could really, I'm sure that in a few years we will look back and we would say, yes, we did it, and so let's go.
That's optimistic. Kami, can you match that?
Okay, let me start with the bad news. I think what you're flagging is indeed that in a moment where European countries have, for most of them, much more money available for defense, there is a tendency to renationalize defense procurement, defense decisions. And they do it also, I don't think they do it out of dislike for the European Union. They do it also because it's simpler, it's the way they've always done it, and it's why bother with all these commission requests, and why not just go, do it my way and all of that, which is, and eventually aggregate a few others, and and we do the trick, and so on and so forth. So I think that is a fact. Just as there is a sort of default setting of saying I'm going to buy American because that's off the shelf. It does not exist. There is not a gigantic Walmart or Carrefour or Deleuze across the Atlantic where everything is stockpiled. It's complicated to build complex defense equipment. So bottom line is, yes, we have to change this mindset, and I think the Parliament and the Brussels, the European Union can help make a difference over time. I think it also requires to work a little bit on the governance of the whole thing, because I think the member states have a fair point when they say at the end of the day, even with the most ambitious MFF in the world, we will be spending 95% of the money will still be on the national budget. But having said this, I think that things are changing and are changing relatively fast. What frightens me the most, to be honest, and I'm sorry to not end on an optimistic note, is to see also divisions within the European Union and a tendency to see more countries and not to turn to our Slovak friends, but more countries being not interested in that type of relationship and being more governments. I wouldn't say countries. I think it would be unfair. Criticizing what we are trying to do here. And we need to get this right and to demonstrate that it delivers, essentially.
Robert, finally, note of optimism, hopefully.
Very briefly, just a small slice of optimism, not because of our unlimited wisdom here in Europe, but because of the economic reality. Every single generation of new weapon system is several times more expensive to develop than the previous one. So in 20, 30, 40 years, we'll be unable to have or to maintain and to develop and maintain 4 fighter jets in Europe or 5 main battle tanks. Simply the economic reality is pushing us towards this cooperation. And if we don't want to end in a situation when we will invest billions and billions of Europe to develop a main battle tank and then produce 5 of them, because we are unable to afford more, then the only solution is to come together. So
we have the solutions. We just have to do it, right? So thank
Indeed.
you very much to my panelists. It was very interesting and a deep discussion. I would now invite this panel to leave the stage, and I will invite our next speaker, the President of Georgia, to come here. We need a small transition here. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. So Georgia, of course, is a country that we would like to be speaking about in a different way. A heartbreaking path that this country has taken. The reports on its EU progress are that it has made a U-turn, and the current government has actually frozen its ambitions. Sorry, I'll get my stuff out of your way here. So this is not the speech that Madam Zurabashvili would like to be giving here. She would like to be on the path to European Union membership as quickly as possible, as quickly as it once seemed possible for Georgia. So we're very much going to look forward to getting some ground truth from the President, as sad and as heartbreaking as this is at the moment. Thank you very much for being here. I'll be right back.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here with you to talk about a country that the European Union has just qualified as being a candidate country only on paper. And that certainly is not what represents the wish of the Georgian population, who has been over the past 3 decades since its independence was reconfirmed, has been steadily demonstrating that it wants a European future. And so I'm ready to talk about the fact that freedom has to be on the offensive, and that we have to fight both for freedom, for democracy, and for Europe. It's not a passive condition. It's not something, freedom and democracy, that you can preserve just by habit, geography, or history alone. Freedom and democracy survive only when they are defended politically, institutionally, and morally. And today Europe faces a decisive moment in which its defense, whether military or democratic, must become proactive and not reactive. The idea that the threats of tomorrow, which I've heard, might be military and security, direct security, harsh security towards Europe, is maybe not that true. And maybe the other challenge the non-military challenge is something that is even more real to Europe and to European countries. And Georgia is in a way the geopolitical frontline of that. It is a frontline case study of how democratic backsliding can unfold in the 21st century, not through tanks, but through hybrid means. Elections manipulated, media captured, rather than shut down overnight, institutions hollowed out from within, not overthrown in a single dramatic moment. Election manipulation is particularly dangerous in this hybrid playbook, one I've warned about repeatedly and not confined to Georgia. We have already seen examples in Romania, Moldova, and even within some EU member states, and it could pose a very grave threat to Ukraine, including after a ceasefire or peace agreement. And Georgia's experience is, in all these regards, very instructing. For years, it was seen as a democratic success story, strong public support for European integration, institutional reforms, and a vibrant civil society, and the think that democracy could take root even under pressure. And what we see today is not a sudden collapse, but a slow corrosion. And this erosion follows a familiar pattern. Power is centralized under the language of stability. Institutions that were built to become independent more and more, courts, election commissions, regulatory bodies, are increasingly politicized and completely controlled. Critical media outlets face strong legal and financial pressure. Civil society is labeled foreign agents, subversive agents. Hybrid interference does not seek to abolish democracy. It seeks to pretend it's democratic and exhaust it, and operates in the gray zones where legality and legitimacy blur. Propaganda is not used to persuade everyone, but to confuse people. Georgia has faced sustained external pressure from Russia, which has refined hybrid tactics over decades, and those efforts go far beyond military posturing. We have known military intervention from Russia, on and on, but today we have a sophisticated campaign of malicious interference aimed at destabilizing from within through both state and non-state actors, using modern tools for old imperial goals. Disinformation and narrative warfare flood our public discourse, distorting history, changing friends and enemies, discrediting Euro-Atlantic aspirations, amplifying anti-democratic, anti-Western narratives. Increasingly, these campaigns are enhanced by artificial intelligence. Their goal is paralysis, to create a society that no longer believes in the possibility of truth, especially during critical democratic moments. And this can only intensify as technology advances. Corruption and elite capture is another pillar of Russia's hybrid interference. Financial incentives, opaque networks, and pressure are used to bend political and media elites towards Russian interests. And when elites serve outside agendas rather than their own citizens, sovereignty becomes a fiction and democracy a hollow promise. Finally, in Georgia, there is a sustained assault on freedom of speech and the press. Independent journalism faces legal harassment, intimidation, and financial strangulation, often encouraged or exploited by pro-Kremlin actors. When watchdogs are silenced, democracy is left defenseless. I'm very grateful to the European Parliament for staying as one of the main defenders of Georgian democracy, and for awarding last year to Mzia Marlobeli the prestigious Sakharov Prize, a well-deserved recognition of her courage and a powerful signal of support for all those fighting for the future of our country. And yesterday was 1 year she has been in jail for nothing. But again, what makes Georgia's experience especially instructive is this, that external pressures succeed only where internal vulnerabilities exist. Democratic erosion is often wrapped up in the language of sovereignty. Leaders claim they are defending national independence while quietly dismantling checks and balances. European values are framed as foreign imposition rather than shared commitments. This rhetoric is powerful sometimes and not unique in Georgia. We see echoes of these dynamics across Europe and beyond, different contexts, different histories, but similar methods. So what does that mean? What does it mean for Europe? It means for us all that we are global Europe, and whatever happens on the margins of Europe in a candidate country can happen tomorrow in any other European country. And that is a very big difference between past centuries' military interventions, that today this hybrid strategy, this hybrid aggression that Georgia is living today can happen in any country, even without common borders with Russia. Russia is testing you while testing Georgia. And for reacting to that, it means first recognizing these hybrid threats early, before erosion becomes irreversible. Electoral integrity, media pluralism, and the rule of laws are becoming security imperatives. All these cases of electoral manipulation, of propaganda, should be studied and proactively mitigated and prevented. It means also supporting civil society, not only through statements that Europe is no longer recognizing the Georgian regime as a candidate status country, but will help the civil society to defend itself. That's statements, but the reality is not there. And it's very important to demonstrate to Russia or to other countries that when democracy is in danger, there are acts and not only statements. And that is where we have to see solidarity and action. Georgia's struggle is not peripheral to Europe's future. It is a warning. And if democratic backsliding can be normalized at Europe's borders without any cost for Russia, then it can be replicated within the borders of Europe. A safe Europe can be built only when looking directly into the eyes those new threats that are very present, and I'm here to testify. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and of course you'll be joining me here for the panel. Take that seat right there. No, yes. You can take that one. I can sit over here. It's fine. Thank you very much. And I think that was a perfect transition into our next topic, the European Union's democracy shield. And of course, what happens if you do not protect your democracy? So we'll be calling up our other
Since the end of the Cold War, we broke down walls. We held free elections. We built democracies. We got globally connected. We created peace. And we gave the EU more power. But things are changing. Free media is diminishing. The building blocks of democracy are shaking. Our values are under pressure. Democracies are in decline. Free elections are burdened. Free speech is at risk. The state of democracy in the world is at the same level today as it was in 1985. It is time for a radical shift. How do we fight fake news? How do we safeguard our free elections? How do we empower citizens? How do we protect our values? The fight for our future starts today.
Wow, that's some interesting facts. 1985, the Baltics were occupied, the Soviet Union was in existence. That's crazy to think about. It certainly gives us something to talk about in our next conversation here. I'd like to call to the stage Nathalie Loiseau. She is the chair of the special committee on the EU Democracy Shield. So we're getting it right from the top here. And also Marietje Schaake, who, of course, used to be a member of this body, but is now a non-resident fellow at Stanford's Cyber Policy Center and at the Institute for Human-Centered AI. She's also the author of Tech Coup, How to Save Democracy from Silicon Valley. So we've got some different perspectives here. Thank you so much to all of you for joining me. And of course, the president remains with us. So Natalie, I will start with you. When the EUDS, we're going to call it that, the EU Democracy Shield was set up in November 2024, I looked back at what you said about it, and you called it a necessary first step, but you said, of course, much more is needed to close gaps in the need for new legislation and for enforcement of the existing rules. So you've had some time now. It's in your hands. What have you learned in that time? What are the biggest gaps, and what can you do to close them?
Well, first of all, thank you for putting this very important topic on the agenda. And thank you, Salome Zourabichvili, for sharing your experience of how Europe failed Georgia. Let us say it that way. Because you were instrumental in granting, in making sure that the EU would grant the candidate status to your country. And when signals were so clear that there was a democratic backsliding ongoing in your country, the EU just had a few statements, and not even 27 member states were able to agree on targeted sanctions against the perpetrators of this democratic backsliding. So it was very important to listen to your experience and to realize that it doesn't only happen to others, that we have been lazy in considering that when there were good news, let us say Moldova being able to resist very strong Russian interference in its democratic processes, well, that was a given, although that was only a miracle. When Romania, after a very difficult period of time where they had reached a point where they had to cancel a presidential election, where Romania was able to reorganize elections and a pro-European candidate won the election, once again there was a sense of relief where there should be a sense of warning signals. The danger coming always closer to all of us. The danger now is inside the European Union. We have seen foreign interferences in the electoral campaign in Germany, in Poland. Well, there is not one single electoral campaign within the European Union, not to mention candidate countries, where there are no foreign interferences. So we know it. It's not a question of hybrid threats, how we used to call them. It's hybrid attacks, and they are on the rise. And they are a different kind of warfare, a low-cost warfare. It's cheap to organize a deep fake. Let's take an example. A few weeks ago, President Macron went public to warn people that there was a deep fake regarding a so-called coup d'etat in France. He was right to mention the risk, but probably wrong to be so specific about the deep fake itself, because it was created by a young African hacker who spent a few €100 to fabricate his deepfake. And he did it only for monetization. And he earned a huge amount of money, not only because his deepfake was successful in Africa, but because it was well known in Europe, because Macron mentioned it. So it's happening now. And we cannot just stick to, I would say, assessing the threats and wondering and discussing for hours what is going to happen to us. We have to assess our own responses, whether they are efficient, whether they are sufficient, and if not, we have to invent new ones. Are our own responses sufficient? Well, when we enforced our regulations, it's already something, but we don't do it that often. Digital Services Act, it's not a nice to have, it's a nice to use. And we see that, and of course Maicho is going to talk about it later, we see that platforms are not abiding by the rule and are facilitating and amplifying foreign interferences. And there are a number of investigations which are not just ongoing by the Commission, they have been completed. Commissioners do know the answer of the results of these investigations. And believe me, if the answers were that platforms behaved, we would have known it for quite some time. It means that some commissioners have the answer, but they don't share it with us. And that's a scandal. This is non-democratic. If we want to protect democracy, let's start by having the Commission enforcing legislation and sharing the results of investigations with the European Parliament. That would be a good.
Is there something you can do about that? I mean, can you
well, I'm asking about it to Vice President Verkunen. It was on a monthly basis. Now it's on a weekly basis, and she keeps on repeating me. It's a question of weeks and months until I have the answer. But she's been saying it for a year now, and I'm getting impatient about it. So first, enforce our legislation. DSA, Artificial Intelligence Act, the regulation or targeting of political advertising. These are serious issues. But we know that we have to do more. And to do more, we have to realize the importance and the value of one of the goods that circulates freely and for good reasons within our union, but has we have very little knowledge about the way it is manufactured, and this is information. We are not yet able to make a difference between professional information manufactured by journalists and fake news, or simply entertainment spread by influencers or whoever wants to make money on platforms. So we have to push for due prominence of verified information on platforms, make veracity more attractive than virality. This has nothing to do with censorship.
That's a really good line. Is that your own?
No, it comes from Reporters Without Borders.
Oh, I should know it already. It's a good one.
I owe them copyrights on that one, but I think it's very powerful.
Yeah.
Not to say that we are going to censor poorly manufactured information. It's just like food. You can buy a pizza if it's full of fat, salt, and sugar. You can buy it if you want to ruin your health. But you know how it was made, and you know it's bad for your health. It should be the same with information. You should be able to listen to silly things, but just know that they were made by people who are not professional journalism. That would be a first thought. The second idea I have is that we keep on complaining about platforms who don't behave the way we would like them to behave, who don't share our values. How surprised should we be? Because none of these platforms are made in Europe. They are made in the US or in China. So don't be surprised that they don't really have the same sense of freedom of expression as we do. when I was living in the US, people would dress themselves as Nazis for Halloween, and that was considered as fun. In Europe, it's a crime. So we don't have the same sense of freedom of expression. Let's just admit it. Let's not have a fight. But maybe the day we have our own platforms could be different. And for that, we need just to bring capital, to bring savings, to support startups so that they become big players in Europe. But it's not only about disinformation. It's also about the methods used by Russia, but more and more by others. Iran is a key player on disinformation. And I'm afraid MAGA is becoming one, and we have to open our eyes. I'm not the Secretary General of NATO, so I can say where the threats are coming from. And we should look at them at a 360 degrees angle. The way foreign interferences are taking place is more and more, less and less using intelligence services, because it's costly. When you use a spy to either spread disinformation or interfere in your electoral process, intimidate candidates or intimidate voters, it's quite costly. And if your spy is getting arrested, it's a problem. You use low-level criminals. You hire them for just one single event on the dark web, or not even on the dark web. It's super cheap and super efficient. And we have to cooperate more between European countries to make sure that there is police and justice cooperation able to share knowledge about these networks between all of us, and not just between the few of us who are used to talk together. We need to go against the financing of foreign interferences through cryptocurrencies, because that's mostly the way these foreign interferences are taking place right now. And Salome said it before, protecting the independence of the judiciary, protecting media pluralism, and it's becoming a challenge in a number of our countries. In Lithuania, attacks against the public broadcasting company. In my home country, attacks against the public broadcasting company.
In my home country too.
In yours too.
Yeah.
It's becoming the new normal. And we should not get used to it, because all these aspects, and there are many of them, joined together are putting our democracies at risk. And we should fight for our democracies, fight for our values. We inherited from them, and we didn't have to fight for them until now, because we are attacked not for what we are doing, but for what we are. Let us remember, we are the most attractive model on earth. Countries want to join us.
Yeah.
People, migrants want to join us for good reasons. And that's the reason why autocrats don't like us. That's the reason why even Donald Trump feels threatened by us, because we are protecting freedoms and values. That's why they are attacking us, and that's why we have to be much more determined to defend them.
Okay, I think those are a lot of good points, and we will, liked by our audience, and we will come back to some of them. But now to turn to you, Madam President, you were nodding and understanding this. And again, just to reiterate the snapshot that you gave us of Georgia today, you can see in real life how it played out, that democracy was not protected. Was there more that, I mean, Natalie said Europe failed you. Do you feel that Europe failed you? Is there more that you could have seen that the European Union could have done to protect Georgian democracy as an aspirant country that was clearly just neglected?
I don't know whether it was neglected, but that there was a failure to see what was happening, certainly. And maybe we inside are also responsible in not having seen early on some of the signs, which appeared first as really some autocratic tendencies that you can attribute to any government that want to stay on power a bit longer than what the public would like to see. And then suddenly you see that it corresponds when the messages that you hear correspond to what has been spread from Russia in different countries. Then you start realizing that this is not just per chance, it's not just local autocrats that are trying to keep on power or money or privileges, but it's a wider strategy. And that's where I think it was more difficult and maybe not on time seen by European Union. When you give the candidate status to a country, you also take responsibility, more responsibility, and you don't let Russia capture a state that you have yourself brought back into the family, the wide family of European Union. Because if that capture of state works and Russia has a new plain strategy, which is using democratic instruments to subvert democracies, elections, social networks, freedom of media, freedom of speech, but used for them. So if they're doing that, and where it would be easy, small country, Georgia, it would be easy to fight it back. It's much easier to fight it back in Georgia than to fight back in Ukraine. The military operation, much easy, much less costly, I would say. But I think that Ukraine is going to be the last of the military fiascos of Russia. I think that by now they are convinced that trying to subvert in different manner without any cost is for them much more safe, does not risk sanctions, does not attract any formal reaction because there are no instruments for that. We're seeing it in Georgia that unfortunately the European Union yet doesn't have any instruments to react to what has been happening. Despite
well, there have been sanctions, so you're just saying that they're ineffective.
There are no sanctions, in fact, until now, because of one country, and that's democracy. You have to respect the rights of every country, and that is something that Russia knows very well and uses.
But there are sanctions on Russians who are spreading disinformation. This is what I'm saying. They're not on Georgians, but on Russians for spreading disinformation. Every single sanctions package includes sanctions against the purveyors of this kind of warfare.
Yes.
But it's not enough.
It's not enough.
Yeah.
It's clearly much more sophisticated. And I think that what it needs, and I would agree with Natalie, it needs from the European Union and European countries more coordination. It needs an agency that deals with those issues. It needs money that is put in those issues because your next war, it's that war. It's not a military war. That I'm convinced.
Yeah. And then let's bring in Marice, who is used to be here, but now Marice, how much does it change this calculation when the United States is no longer on the same side as the European Union, doesn't see this at all, in fact sees the EU as the enemy because it's going after the platforms? I just can't even imagine what it's like to live there among the tech bros and see the reaction to...
Well, I think you probably can imagine better than others because you're an American living here, and, you know, I think it's more than anything incredibly painful, but we have to be very clear-eyed about what's happening. And so I want to jump to the question of what the alliance between the tech leaders and Trump means for Europe. Not because I don't think defense is important, but I feel like we've covered that in the previous discussions.
Well, and as the president is pointing out, that is another form of warfare.
Absolutely.
And it's an easy, cheap, worldwide tactic.
Yes, but I think there's a whole spectrum of risk for Europe coming from tech dominance and dependencies on American tech platforms that we are not appreciating for what it is. Because I think Europeans are prone to fall into the regulation trap. It's been a strength for years. And so the answer to a lot of problems still remains regulation or less regulation in the case of the omnibus package. But the whole focus should be on building, building, building. Because it's not only that technology platforms are tools for disinformation. They are the infrastructure of our lives, of our economies, of our defense operations, and of our democracy, ultimately, because they underpin almost everything. We have near total dependence that has economic effects, obviously. You know, to me, it's crazy. Recently, the Dutch Central Bank warned about the exposure of Dutch pension funds for investing in US tech stock. This was mostly an economic warning, but the warning revealed that 200 billion euros of Dutch only, pensioners is invested in US stock. And of course, a lot of these stocks are owned by investors and CEOs that are completely aligned with President Trump on attacking the EU, on attacking the rule of law, on attacking international law, undermining the rules-based order, stepping away from multilateralism. What are we doing? And so we have to understand the scope of our tech dependence, and that it is absurd that on the one hand we have the leadership of President Macron in very much understanding the value of AI, making France an AI leader, and signing a contract with Palantir, whose CEO now promotes the so-called West that President Trump has, you know, dramatically changed, if not destroyed, but it certainly is not the kind of West that we used to refer to 5 or 10 years ago or even 50 years ago. And so we have to understand that a number of these tech companies are either proactively supporting the US president in his anti-democratic and anti-European agenda. They are tools of power and tools of imperialism. But also, even the companies who are not excited, who are not funding the gold-plated new ballroom, who have not funded the inauguration, who are not going to be funding, USA House in Davos and what have you, they are all subject to the power of the executive of the United States. And that power was great. We've noticed it under Obama, Biden, Bush, but it will be greater under Trump because he more shamelessly uses it. And we hear the CEOs quite explicitly, you know, either cheering on trade war, for example, or using their own algorithms for their own political agendas, their own companies in the form of Starlink, in the form of X. And so I think we really have to step up our appreciation of the importance of digital sovereignty for our resilience, for the survival of our economic and democratic independence. And currently, unfortunately, we don't. I agree with Nathalie, who says, how can it be that the verdicts on these companies that are under scrutiny by new laws are being withheld? But what's more is that we don't have to await the due process to make political statements. You know, it's fine to you know, follow due course. You know, companies can give more information and so on, but it's again this regulatory trap. Why don't we hear stronger condemnations of assessments of near civil war situations by tech bros or things like that? I mean, it is completely absurd that we are still looking to diplomacy or to another letter from the king or to an even more, you know, beautiful reference to the special relationship between country A, B, or C and the United States. One is not working. Two, we are not focusing on the right place, which is building, building, building. And I'm convinced that this group, which I know better than many others, but that I also see as very pro-European, very realistic and interested in global affairs, able to build coalitions more broadly than many others in this House, and with critical leaders in critical places, in governments, but also international organizations at the EU level. Let's be more strategic and let's focus on what really matters, because the distraction is part of the goal. You know, to have us think about different things, whether it's entertainment or whether it is other distractions, we really need to understand what is the European interest and invest in building that up and seeing it as an integral part of everything, not a sector, not a tool, and not an instrument. It's infrastructure of our democracies.
And do you see the EU Democracy Shield, from, although it's nascent, as a way that we can do this? Sorry if she. If she doesn't think so, Natalie, but...
Well, I mean, I'm sure it helps, but it's not fast enough and it's not enough. So it's a policy tool, even though this requires a complete turnaround of one, understanding where we stand in today's world, what is our role in history, and how critical the situation is, not only for Ukraine and Georgia, which I agree are at the front lines in many different ways of the fight that we are all facing as Europeans, and that we've sort of outsourced in many ways to the Ukrainians. The Georgians, I think, have not been appreciated for getting out there every day
in front of Parliament
to stand for the survival of democracy and its European future. I loved how we started today with music by Ukrainians because it appeals to our hearts. And I strongly believe that what the Ukrainians and the Georgians show us that we may have forgotten in a position of luxury because we've just become too used to the freedoms that we have, is that one way to answer hate is with love. And I think that this is something that we need to be proud for our love of Europe, and I know this group is, but also be very real about what it takes to defend it. And sorry, regulation is reactive, and it's something that the big tech companies, especially with support from the most powerful government in this world, can easily pass through. It really won't hurt them. Even bigger sanctions, it's just not enough.
I want to give Natalie a chance to respond to that, but I also want to bring in one more intervention first from Julie Myarchuk, from Reporters Without Borders. I believe she's here and there. Julie, you wanted to come in on this. I just want to throw this into the mix before we start discussing.
Is it working? Oh,
yeah.
Yes, it's working. Yes, so I represent reporters. Okay. So I represent Reporters Without Borders to the EU institution. And we've been working on the Democracy Shield, and I think here everyone will agree that journalism is very important at the heart of democracy, and that we need to defend trusted journalism better as an antidote to disinformation and FIMI. And for the first time, we have a common legal framework to protect media freedom, independence, and pluralism. But it's true that even a full enforcement of this European Media Freedom Act will not be enough because I think it was already said, but the main challenge today for journalism and for the society, the entire society, is the dominance of platforms and the dominance of US or Chinese platform, not European platforms, because first they are absorbing almost all the advertisement revenue that used to go to journalism. And secondly, because they are made for profit and not to inform. So trustworthy journalism is put at the margin, and what is viral is what is divisive, what is polarizing, disinformation, etc. So Nathalie Loiseau already mentioned one of our main proposals, which is to give more visibility, to have a legal obligation to give more visibility to reliable information, reliable journalistic information. And our second proposal will be to have a tax on platform with part of it funding journalism, because today they get most of the advertisement revenue, and journalism is really in a crisis also from a financial point of view.
Thank you. As someone who works for 2 public broadcasters, I can only back this up. Our budget is cut every day, and so how do those things work? Do you force the algorithms? I mean, you can't make these commercial companies change their algorithms to put reliable news first, can you? I mean, Marita, you will know more about that than I do, which doesn't take much.
I think, I mean, as much as I support, in many ways, the absolute need for the survival of independent quality journalism, let's not romanticize the role of media companies either. Some of them are doing sort of big media as the answer to big tech, using data the very same way that we now criticize the companies for doing. And whenever I read one of the main newspapers that I care about, and because of my privacy settings, I still get these screenfuls of mentions that I should change my settings because I could be enjoying content of X and LinkedIn and YouTube and whatnot. So I think this has to do with the fact that even a number of media companies do not appreciate what this is really about. So I agree that the survival of media companies is crucial, but I would really caution upon making it dependent on the way in which tech companies operate, because then you still make them the platforms of access, of traffic, of insights, of data. I'm not sure about the exact points of Reporters Without Borders, so please take this as a broad comment. Another aspect that is missing is the importance of the public function of the public sector, and that goes for public broadcasters, of course, but also educational organizations, cultural organizations, that in many ways have become squeezed because of the role that tech companies play. Young kids are now working on Google or Microsoft platforms in their schools without much of a choice. While we're concerned about our dependence on foreign tech, we are all sleepwalking into AI use of the big platforms that we're all using at work, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think it's really important to see the depth of it and to make sure that in the process of answering one problem, which is clearly there, we don't create another one. And I think that really requires seeing it as a much more fundamental power question that involves not only sovereignty but also self-determination of individuals. How much choice do we have? How can we be coerced? How can we be manipulated? There are now new questions about, how generative AI can steer all of our understanding of the world, because it's much harder to even understand where information came from in the first place. And I'm sure there was an article in the Atlantic this week that said, is it just, or something like that, that Venezuela got the treatment that it did, because that's what people are looking up in generative AI platforms, and they probably Googled it before, and then Google would publish what people were Googling as a sort of sentiment meter. But there was a time where a search engine truly led people through to original sources, and that time is long behind us.
And so what can you do, Natalie? This was my original question is, you've now, with a little bit more than a year under the EUDS, have you come up with any tools that answer these really existential questions?
Well, is it working?
Yeah.
It's not more than a year since EUDS. It's more than a year since we created our special committee, but we just got the communication from the Commission very late, and for reasons that probably have to do with some sort of shyness from the Commission's president. She had announced that there would be a European Democracy Shield just after being confirmed as the Commission president. And then Donald Trump came back to power. The tech companies aligned with him or decided for him what he had to say. Let us not forget that DSA and DMA were created with the platforms present in the room. and saying at the time that they would abide with
Oh, that's right. When you
what
had
we
the-
were deciding, because that was fine with them. Otherwise, we would have probably been more bolder than what we were.
the voluntary commitment. Yep.
So Ursula von der Leyen took a lot of time before she came out with her own version of the communication on Democracy Shield, and it's just a menu. Now we have to order and we have to see the dishes and cook them. So there are a lot of work ahead of us, and I'm pretty certain that we should never forget who we are. That is the wealthiest common market on earth. Platforms may disagree. Elon Musk may answer to me when I'm tweeting about the fine he got. He finally got
that's
one.
right. He did
Because
answer
he
you.
knows that there's a list of additional fines he deserves. But at the end of the day, if platforms still want to make business and make profit among 450 European users, they will have to abide by our rules. We should stop shying away from doing anything just because Donald Trump says that he might put additional tariffs or withdraw troops. Do we really think that's the way Xi Jinping reacted when he threatened China? When he said that he would put 100% tariffs on China, Xi Jinping said, very fine, okay, so forget about raw materials. And then they discussed, and they had one of these beautiful deals that Donald Trump likes. We should start learning to do the same thing. But Marietje is right to say that, yes, we have to promote professional, trusted journalism. There's no doubt about it. Otherwise, we will see it dying under our own eyes, and we will have this sort of nostalgia. Oh, that was these good old days where there were professional journalists. So we have to play our part in protecting and promoting professional journalism. But yes, you're right, a number of media companies still don't get it, are not interested, and some are not necessarily the ones that provide fair, professional, factual treatment of information. But let's admit it. Let's make sure that we protect pluralism, that we have different sources. And it's not how things are going, especially in an economic sector that is having a lot of challenges. Who buys a media right now, if not a billionaire, ready to lose money in order to gain influence? This is what we are facing now in Europe. And we have to do much more to protect public broadcasting and public media in order to have, and ask them to live up to their responsibilities in order to have something to hang on to. But I'm still willing to say, yes, we have a power in our hand. The Commission should stop being afraid of using it, should stop dreaming of going back to the good old days where people were nice on the other side of the Atlantic. Because if we are not acting now, there will be a moment where it's too late, where we cannot survive this tsunami of fake content, or we let it fail by itself. You mentioned AI and generative AI, ChatGPT and the rest. What's happening now is that powers like Russia or China are poisoning AI content. They are doing it on purpose. They are building millions of contents daily in order for ChatGPT and others to build their so-called knowledge on false information. And then they spread it with fake accounts, trolls and bots. There will be a time where platforms will be places where bots are talking one to another, sharing fake content. And maybe we humans will turn to something else. I mean, they might very well destroy their own business model going so far. And you have a number of people within tech companies who are considering this risk and are fully aware of this risk. So let us be, as Europeans, much bolder, and let us also bring back the savings, as you were mentioning, Marietje, that we are saving money and sending it to the US instead of bringing this savings to European companies, making sure that we have something as boring as the European financial market, a single market, making sure that we have companies that we promote and get nearer to what we expect and maybe what young generations will find more palatable to this than this already old-fashioned tech companies.
I want to bring back in the president. When you're listening to this, it must seem like such a luxury that they can still talk about what might happen when we actually have seen this happen in Georgia, haven't we? I mean, was there a point at which more media literacy or more support for the public broadcaster could have turned the tide? Exactly, but as they often do. I mean, we've seen that happen.
And he's still a member of EBU.
So is it?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's
well, because we want the
I'm going
video. So this is out of self-interest, because if it's a member of EBU, it exchanges video with the rest of us, so we get the Georgian protests. I mean, this is how Eurovision works. So,
But at the same time, to finish with a more optimist note, we have all these same problems and in a more bigger dimension. But we are also experimenting, and we are seeing, since we do not have really any major opposition channels or free channels, and they all have difficulties, we see a flourishing of podcasts and of individual attempts to provide free information and pluralism, which is very important at this stage. Of course, we also are under the risk that one day the Iranian model of closing down everything can also happen. But while it has not happened, while the society is alive, there is always a chance to test something new, to try something new, and to finish, to say that this next war is one that needs money, that needs professionals, that needs technologies. It's a real new dimension of war that has to be taken seriously.
this new war, meaning the war that is waged on the tech channels.
The hybrid war in all its dimensions.
Okay, that's ominous, but perhaps hopeful. Marietje, I wanted to bring you back in. What do you see as the solution here? And we only have a couple minutes, and we have the Commissioner McGrath that is
Well,
coming
I
up.
really appreciated how Mark Rutte said that everything that EU members of NATO have to do is also an opportunity for its industry, for its resilience, and so on. And I would love to see von der Leyen, but also all of you, think about the enormous fork in the road that President Trump has presented us with as an opportunity to do a lot of things that Europe should have done a long time ago. Because a lot of the economic challenges that Mario Draghi is seeking to address in his reports are not new. We've known for a long time. I mean, Capital Markets Union has been talked about for as long as I can remember, and that's a while. So there are a lot of things that we knew we had to do, but somehow I guess there was not political momentum. And I think that a lot of our citizens feel worried about different things. Kids are talking about, are we going to have to go into army service? Companies are talking about risk that they're exposed to, or maybe investments that they're going to make in the US, hoping that that will sort of tame the beast. But they are not necessarily energized by more doom and gloom. I think they really crave perspectives of hope, and that building a stronger Europe, including for entrepreneurs, including investing in knowledge, including strengthening our broad resiliency, so democratic resilience as well as defense, and the digital parts underpinning all of it, can really be a perspective that people are willing to join and that everyone has to play a role in. Whether it is organizations making different choices of how they purchase, whether it's procurement guidelines, whether it is divestments and different investments, whether it is removing all those barriers in the internal market. There's so much that can be done on so many levels, but I think people are a little bit overwhelmed and they need a hopeful perspective and breaking down into bite-sized chunks. And I'm 100% sure it's possible, because we need this to be a sort of whole of society effort. And Renew has its work carved out for it.
Okay, well, the commissioner is due to take the stage now, so that is going to do it for us. I think that, I mean, this does, I'm not sure, you mentioned a hopeful perspective, but it still feels very heavy. I'm one of those people who feels overwhelmed. So I hope that we can continue conversations like this, and that the EUDS will also bring some solutions. And I would expect we'll be hearing about that, especially from you, Natalie. And thank you very much, Madam President. It was really an honor to have you here, and to that we could all bear witness to your continued struggle to overcome the things that we were talking about. So thank you very much for being here together. And I will now, as my panel leaves, I will now introduce Michael McGrath, the Commissioner for, and this is a lineup, Democracy, Justice, the Rule of Law, and Consumer Protection. So that we will have a little stage transition here, and the Commissioner will take the stage. Thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you all very much, and good afternoon to everyone, and Happy New Year. I believe that the event has gone really well this afternoon, so congratulations to Valerie, to all of the organisers, dear President Zurabishvili, honourable members of the European Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for inviting me to deliver today's closing keynote address. And I will focus on a topic that shapes not just our institutions, but also our very way of being, that of democracy. Democracy is not an abstract principle. It is a living, tangible presence in our daily lives. We know that safeguarding and strengthening democracy for the future is essential. And the European Democracy Shield is our answer, outlining our vision for ensuring healthy, resilient democracies for tomorrow. We have already heard this afternoon from Secretary-General Rutte about the challenges that Europe faces in terms of security and defence. Commission President von der Leyen set this out starkly, as you know, in her State of the Union address back in September, when she emphasised that Europe was in a fight for its security, prosperity, and also for its values. And let us not forget, or indeed underestimate, that Russia's full-scale war of aggression did not begin with overt death and destruction, but with covert deceit and disinformation. And since then, the world around us, as we know, has changed dramatically. We are witnessing profound shifts in the global order, and Europe cannot ignore these. Geopolitical instability on our doorstep reminds us that peace and security are not guaranteed. We see conflicts, external pressures, and many hybrid threats. We see the resurgence of power politics, major powers asserting influence, challenging international norms, and carving out spheres of influence that directly affect our security, our economies, and our very democratic values. Hybrid attacks against our democracies are coming in multifaceted forms, whether that be interference in our elections, manipulation of our engagement online, contamination of our information space through disinformation campaigns, and even sabotage and subversion. This is undermining the very fabric of our democratic societies. The reality is that Europe is in a fight, and this is why freedom must go on the offensive. In this evolving world, Europe must stand firm. We cannot be passive observers as the rules of international engagement are rewritten before our very eyes. We must defend our core values of democracy, human rights, the rule of law, while protecting our strategic interests from energy security to economic resilience. This is a moment for Europe to act with unity, with purpose and with resolve, to demonstrate that we are capable of both safeguarding our citizens but also helping to shape a stable and rules-based world. I've learned that democracy's true essence is found in the everyday courage that we see. When judges stand firm as threats become personal, when journalists tell the truth, knowing that it could cost them their careers and sometimes even more, when parents and teachers compete for our children's hearts and minds against the most addictive technology that we have ever seen. And that is where democracy lives, and that is also where we must defend it. So we're not fighting for our democratic values for reasons of abstract principle. We fight for them because they are the basis of Europe's flourishing, free, open and pluralistic societies. Democracy, the rule of law and respect for fundamental rights are the foundation of our union, of our peace, of our security and of the shared prosperity. They are our very European identity. Regression in one of these values leads to regression in another. The defence of one of these values is the defence of another too. And just as these rights apply to all of us, the responsibility to promote and to protect them also falls to all of us, collectively and individually. The Commission, as guardian of the treaties, the Parliament, the MEPs, national parliaments and elected representatives, member states, civil society, businesses and individual citizens. This is freedom on the offensive. To face up to the sustained challenges and multifaceted threats that our democracies are under today, the Commission, as you know, presented back in November the European Democracy Shield, putting forward an integrated whole-of-government but also a whole-of-society response. The Shield highlights the need for action across three main priority areas: safeguarding the integrity of the information space, reinforcing our democratic institutions, free and fair elections, and free and independent media, and finally boosting societal resilience and citizens' engagement across the European Union. And one of our flagship actions is the creation of the European Centre for Democratic Resilience, which we will now set up this year. This centre will pool expertise across participating member states, EU institutions and bodies, but also candidate countries to improve common analysis, information sharing and operational cooperation. So we have started to put in motion the arrangements for this centre so that it can become operational speedily. To intensify action against foreign information, manipulation, interference and disinformation, we will build on the existing legislative acquis that we have worked together to develop: the Digital Services Act, the AI Act, the Political Advertising Regulation, and we will do so with a DSA incidents and crisis protocol to prevent and to manage major threats in the information space. We will reinforce cooperation with signatories of the DSA Code of Practice on disinformation, such as the demonetisation of disinformation, and a blueprint to counter foreign information manipulation, interference and disinformation will be brought forward. To reinforce our democratic institutions and the fundamental importance of free and fair elections, we will intensify the cooperation that happens under the European Cooperation Network for Elections. And we will address the use of AI in elections through guidelines and safety in politics through a Commission recommendation, focusing in particular on women and vulnerable groups. To reinforce free and independent media, we will support media pluralism and also the economic viability of media by reviewing existing EU legislation, deploying financial tools, strengthening the fight against SLAPs, and updating the recommendation on the safety of journalists. And to boost societal resilience and the engagement of our citizens by reinforcing skills and encouraging participation, we will propose an EU citizenship competence framework We will reinforce media literacy initiatives for all age groups and social groups, and we will publish an EU democracy guide. In 3 priority areas of action, we see alignment between the Democracy Shield and Renew Europe's Paris and Estonia declarations. As called for in the Estonian declaration, the Shield reiterates the need for the full implementation and the robust enforcement of the EU's digital rulebook. And let me clearly say this. Our digital and democracy rulebook is our European compass for securing our values and foundations of our union. The rulebook is about transparency and accountability to ensure fair competition, consumer protection and the safety of our children online. It is about a safe Europe. And the Commission's recent decision against X illustrates this commitment clearly and firmly. The DSA and the Political Advertising Regulation already work to protect the integrity of the information space. The European Media Freedom Act and the Anti-SLAPS package already work to support free, plural and independent media. The AI Act already establishes transparency obligations so that users know if what they are seeing is real or fake. And we know this is needed more than ever before. And through the DSA Elections Toolkit, we will also learn from the experience of recent elections so that we can help to safeguard future ones. And across the information space, the Commission will also work with the signatories of the Code of Conduct on Disinformation to strengthen demonetising disinformation, labelling AI-generated content, and voluntary user verification tools. And as affirmed in Renew Europe's Paris Declaration, we must support candidate and potential candidate countries fighting to protect their democracies. And I know you have just been listening to a prime example of how that is needed now more than ever. This is why, for example, the Shield reinforces the mandate and the capacities of the European Digital Media Observatory to include key neighbouring countries, to pool experience and expertise and to build situational awareness across borders. And as Commissioner for Democracy, but also as a citizen who started to serve as elected representative more than 25 years ago, I agree wholeheartedly that democracy is still the system of government that is best placed to advance human progress. But let's be honest, today there are growing voices against the merits of democracy, including indeed in this very House. Recent history, however, has proven us right. This is why democracy can win, and this is why democracy will win. Your commitment to fight for democracy in a sustained way at local, national and European levels and beyond is also reflected in the approach that we adopted in bringing forward the Democracy Shield. And as I have said, to do so demands a whole-of-society approach. We all have to work together in a genuine spirit of collaboration to achieve our goal. And this is why supporting free, plural and independent media is one of the main priorities of the European Democracy Shield, and the implementation and the enforcement of the European Media Freedom Act will be an essential tool in this regard. In December, we launched the first enforcement actions for the European Media Freedom Act, and we will also follow up closely to ensure that this act is not only a groundbreaking piece of legislation, but that it becomes a game changer on the ground in reality. As called for in your Estonia declaration, the Democracy Shield also provides for new funding opportunities for EU media and journalists, with initiatives such as the Media Resilience Programme acting as a bridge between the current and the next MFF, and to support citizens in making their own informed judgments on what they see and hear. The Shield aims to support media and digital literacy in education and beyond. This will cover a whole variety of initiatives, from the development of an EU citizenship competence framework to updated guidelines for teachers and educators on tackling disinformation, promoting digital literacy and strengthening citizenship education. And this is also why the Shield was adopted in a democracy package together with the first ever EU-wide civil society strategy, to acknowledge the invaluable role that we know civil society organisations play every day to respond to their growing needs and to react to the unacceptable pressure that too many of them are facing at this time. To conclude, The scope of the European Democracy Shield shows how we share your conviction that the strength of our democracies lies in our unity, but also in our shared commitment to the founding values of our Union as the cornerstones of our peace, security and our shared prosperity. And this is more important than ever. Pressure is coming from all directions, even from old allies like the United States, through sanctions, trade restrictions and economic leverage, sometimes challenging a fair, rules-based international order. But Europe's strength lies in its unity. Our values are our greatest power. Upholding democracy, human rights and a rules-based system is what gives Europe credibility and leadership on the world stage. We need the European Democracy Shield not only to shield democracy from the threats that I've described and I know you have been discussing, but we need the shield because democracy itself is the very shield against these threats. Democracy is the shield against disinformation, division and disillusionment. Democracy is the shield of our citizens' freedoms, rights and opportunities. Democracy is the shield of Europe's peace, security and prosperity. And this is why defending our physical borders must go hand in hand with defending our intangibles, our values and our rights. The presentation of the communication on the European Democracy Shield was only the beginning. That I can promise you. It will take more than Commission action to protect and promote our European democracies. It will take the action of each and every institution, elected representative, civil society organisation and citizen. And this is why we also count on you as we roll out the Democracy Shield initiatives this year and next. And together, I am sure that we will protect and promote a safe and a prosperous Europe. And I want to thank Renew Europe for holding this event today, for providing a forum for debating the crucial topics of security and defence, but also democracy, which is the very first line of defence of the European Union. And that's why we have to work together. We have to support our citizens at a time of great challenge, but a time when we must stand together in the vanguard of European democracy, promote it, protect it, advocate for its importance in a world when it can no longer be taken for granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear friends. So, don't worry, I will not keep you much longer in this room. Thank you first. I'm looking for Terry, Marike, Terry. Just Terry, thank you. A big thank you for hosting our event.
Very nice of you. Thank you so much.
For having nourished our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a privilege to be here.
Thank you, dear Michael, for your presentation. Mentioning our Estonia declaration, indeed, we count on you in the Commission to deliver on the democracy package. You know it, you mentioned it. There is no time to lose, and we are on your side on this very specific issue. Thank you once more to all the participants for your expertise, your input, your ideas. And thank you to all of you in the room for your presence and active participation. Just a last word before we leave. We went through over 3 hours of very interesting and I may say at times challenging and provocative talks. One word I heard a lot this afternoon is wake-up call. The Trump election is a wake-up call. Russia invading Ukraine is a wake-up call. Putin's bots rigging elections at our border is a wake-up call. Drones flying over our airports are a wake-up call. Trump's threats over Greenland is a wake-up call. But how many more wake-up calls will we be waiting for? Are we going to wait for the one wake-up call too many? So I think all of us in the room know the answer. It's time for Europe to stand up for itself. It's time for Europe to cut our dependencies. It's time for Europe to put our freedom on the offensive. So let's turn it all into action right now. So tomorrow we'll continue with the group in our group meeting and discussion tomorrow morning. And for all of you, enjoy the evening. For those I meet, we gather together during our cocktail party tonight. Thank you to all of you. Thank you again, and thank you again, dear President. Merci. And thank to all the team for the huge organizations. It's a big event. Thank you really to the RANU team and all those who were involved in this event. Thank you very much.